It's loading.
Yeah, that's right. I see the chat. I see y'all rocking. I see y'all coming. Hit that like button as you enter the building. You know what I'm saying? Hit that like button. Show your love. Show your support. You know what I'm saying? This that dope soul. This that new thing. Nobody don't know about.
Oh, we are live. We're live. We didn't get the. Oh, I was waiting for the video, the intro. Okay, all right. Salute Knicks family. You caught us behind the scenes. Welcome to, I guess we'll call it the series recap show, a pop-up show. I'm going to apologize early. I've been on vacation. The Knicks lost Saturday. I was on the cruise Sunday, traveled all day today, didn't get home till 7. So my thoughts may not be as put together as Geoff and Ajay. But
They'll
I'm still
be
here.
Smarter than mine. And anyway, Ajay, I don't know. You may have some comments. But
I'm still here chomping at the bit to talk about the Knicks. The first thing I want to say though before we get started is just shout out to. Let me start with the chat first. Just shout out to the chat for just rocking with us all season. And, you may not think it matters, but it does. And you may not think that, we take what you say in the comments seriously, but we do. And particularly myself, and just how smart you guys are. And it helps me, rethink things, because for me, I have no problems with having a take on Monday. And then from listening to the panel, listening to those on Twitter who are also smart, listening to you in the chat, by the following Monday, that same take has evolved a little bit. And it's because of the interaction with you, Geoff, and Ajay, and Jerrell, Boogie, Delusional, Tone, Sam, but also those in the chat. So I appreciate you all. And then shout out to all the Knick content creators out there just pumping out content, regardless of whatever type of fan you are, very statistically minded fan, or just want to get things off your chest. There is a content creator and a show for you. That's how diverse this Knick content creating community is. So I appreciate that. Anyway, Geoff, Ajay, how are you guys doing before we get into the meat of the show?
Well, the stages of grief, right? I'm in the acceptance stage, right? It kind of hit me. Game 7 would have been tonight if it happened. And we went through 9 months of Knick basketball, and we don't get to watch this team play again, a game that means anything again, until October. So it was a great ride, though. The beginning of the season, we said Eastern Conference Finals were bust. We got to the Eastern Conference Finals, so let's celebrate that. We had increased expectations when we saw who our opponent was in the ECF, and then they weren't who we thought they were. They were a lot better than we expected, I think, and so that led to disappointing results. You blew game 1, you blew game 2. You can't afford to do that in the playoffs, but sometimes you get outplayed, and it was not meant to be. It was not our year, but it's a lot to be hopeful for. Look, this was year 1. We just put this team together overnight. It's not like we've been, with this group. It was their first go around, and they did a lot. If we're 6 wins away from a championship, not quite at what we wanted, and we're desperate and we're hungry and we're thirsty. I get it. I'm all of those things with you, but great season nonetheless.
Yeah. Ajay, anything before we get into the meat and potatoes of Game 6 and the series?
Queen, salute to you, Geoff, and the chat, of course. Knicks Nation, salute. I'm fine. I'm not, sad or hurt or anything like that. I think that the team, this is the first time this team, I mean, this is season one that the team's been put together. And I think they did great. I mean, I see a lot of people online trying to troll the Knicks, and most of, like, 99% of the time you don't engage. And when I do engage, I'm like, Knicks Nation is like, we're excited about this. I mean, this is year one. Like, what do you guys think we're upset? I, like, we're upset probably because we lost to the Pacers. We felt we could go further. But if back in October, November, they told us we were going to make it to 6 games into the Eastern Conference Final, like, everybody would have been like super excited about this for year one. Okay, I'm not. I did not underestimate the Indiana Pacers. In fact, I thought they were the worst matchup for us before we went into this. Actually, Queen,
Yeah.
I'm sure we had that conversation before the
Yeah.
playoffs, and I said I do not want to meet the Pacers. I was not afraid of Milwaukee, Boston, or even Cleveland.
Mhm.
The Pacers were the worst matchup for us from day one. I because of the way they play, the speed that they play, like, all these
Mhm.
basket they score in 5 seconds. Like, you make a basket, 5 seconds later they're already at the other end making a basket. We're not built to defend that team, and they built to defend us because they played us last season. They've only gotten better from the time, from last season when we played them. I thought they were a terrible matchup for us, and so, and then to make matters worse, that game one, like, in a conference final, you can't you can't relax. Like, you can't give away not one quarter, not even a possession. We give away a whole game. It was, from it would have been very hard to overcome that. And the fact that we made it to game six, man, it's really amazing that we even made it to game six. Because we played a couple of good games on there, um, to show that we have something, we have some heart. But we were in a position where it just was impossible, not impossible, but nearly impossible to come out of where we put ourselves. So, I'm good. I'm happy with the team. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
we can't improve though, but we'll talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we will. I mean, I think we talk a lot about game one, but I don't think we talk enough about game two. And Monica and I felt this already, and then Monica also brought it up on, on the show she does in the morning on that channel. Um, we talked about game one, oh, you give up a game like that, and how do you come back, and this and that. But what about game two? What about the response, right? You lose, it's not uncommon for a team with home court advantage to lose the first game, but then they respond and they come back and they win the second. The fact that the Knicks went down 0-2 to me is what put them behind the 8 ball, so to speak, more so than just losing the first game. I just didn't think the Knicks responded, um, in game two. But I'm going to follow you both of your leads in a sense of starting with the macro, and then we can move to, um, game six. In my wildest dream, I shouldn't say in my wildest dreams, I should say I didn't expect the Knicks to get to the Eastern Conference Finals once the season started. And I got to look at Cleveland, and I got to look at Boston, and I got a front seat look at the Knicks and just how inconsistent they were throughout the season. I just did not think they were better than Cleveland. I did not think they were better than Boston. And I know a lot of fans were saying ECF or bust. And I'm like, ECF or bust? That means that they would have had to beat teams that were better than them to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And say what you want about this team in terms of being inconsistent. Um, they really grew up between game 82 and what we saw in the playoffs. Detroit series, the Boston, the Boston series. They really grew up and became something different, I thought, than what we saw throughout the season. And then in Indiana, some of that inconsistency came back. But I think Indiana had a lot to do with it. And I don't think we're giving them enough credit. Was there things Tom Thibodeau could have done? Yes. Things in terms of player performances, could those have been better? Yes. The execution of the game plan, you could say whatever you want to say about Thibodeau. You're not going to tell me that they weren't focusing on limiting transition points and exactly how do you do that against this team. Like, you're not going to tell me that wasn't part of the game plan. So to me, that was definitely an execution thing, and it could be a lineup thing. We'll get into that, as well. But overall, wow, to beat Boston and get to the Eastern Conference Finals, I think that was, that was impressive. I still think that these two teams were evenly matched, and I think that the Knicks had an opportunity to go to the NBA Finals in the first year of putting this team together. And Indiana has something to do with it, but there was a lot of self-inflicted wounds, so to speak, that stopped the Knicks from getting there. So let's just start with, a simple question. And my list is like this long. Why? Let me get the specific question. What went wrong? And we're going to just start with Game 6, and then we'll talk about the series. What went wrong? Why did the Knicks lose Game 6? And I'm sorry, and listen, for those of you, this is 2 days later. You probably don't want to hear us rehashing why the Knicks lost Game 6, but this is our first opportunity since the Knicks lost. This is the first time we've been on. So I know you probably heard this like 500 times from different content creators, but this is our first time. All right. So you're going to get our views on it. What went wrong, Geoff? Why did the Knicks lose Game 6? Pick one thing, and then we'll piggyback. Pick, because there's a lot. Just pick one thing.
What Trey warned us about before the series started, and shout out to our guy Trey Frazier and his Barbershop Sports Network. Awesome stuff over there. Really sharp content creator. If you're not paying attention to his stuff, you need to be. But turnovers, like the Knicks were sloppy with the ball. And you not only were we sloppy with the ball, it seemed like every turnover that we did have led directly to an Indiana 2 or a 3 on the other end. So,
correct.
When you're talking about 15, 17, 19 turnovers, that's just way too many. And the Knicks all year long, Tom Thibodeau's preached ball security, ball protection, but I think the Pacers do an outstanding job of speeding you up, and they're even willing to allow you easy baskets at certain points. Like that, if they can get that the tempo of the game up, they're willing to sacrifice a point or two here because they just have this feeling that they can play that style and that brand of basketball better than you can. And when the Knicks get sped up, you get Josh Hart mental mistakes. You get Karl Anthony Towns mental mistakes. You get Mikal Bridges, and so you saw multiple turnover games from nearly every starter that we had in the series. But really, to me, the biggest thing in Game 6 was lack of protection of the ball, and that leads to extra possessions for them. But equally as important, no shot attempt for us, and we need to win the shot attempt game if we're going to win in the playoffs most of the time.
Yeah, Geoff, that was, to me, it doesn't have to be this way, but for me in this series, turnovers and fast break points was like together. Right? And it doesn't have to be. You can have a turnover and defend and it not lead to a basket, it not lead to a fast break point. But in this series, they were together. Turnover meant a point. And it didn't just mean that they scored on that possession. It was a fast break point. It was like a transition point every time we turned the ball over. And coming into this series, to your point about them speeding us up, coming into this series, I said, look, the number one thing, the key to winning this series is transition defense, limiting those fast break points, and getting Indiana to play a half court game. And they're good in half court too. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, they're good in half court too. But if you want to win this game, you have to take away what they do best. To me, Geoff, even if that meant we gave up offensive rebounding, which was an advantage coming in that we supposedly had, but when you look at the numbers, they mitigated that. Game 6, we were +2 in second chance points, and you can look at every game. That margin that we thought we had coming into the series just wasn't there, game after game after game, and that was one of our advantages, right? But we did nothing to take away their advantage, which is transition points. As a matter of fact, we helped fuel it. We helped them by turning the ball over, trying to make these passes that wasn't there because they were all in. Now, I'm not taking anything from them. They were all in the passing lanes, getting deflections. But some of those turnovers for us, we had 17 turnovers. At least 5 were unforced. Probably even more. And I'm just talking about game 6. They had 34 points of turnovers. If, Geoff, we playing one-on-one, we go to the playground, we playing one-on-one, and I front you 20 points, it's going to be hard for me to win. And this is what the Knicks did not in game 1 and 4. Every single game, they had at least, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, at least 20 points off turnovers. You can't, to me, that's number one for beating this team. You can't do that. And the Knicks, who are not a high turnover team, by the way, became one in this series. Ajay, anything you want to add in terms of turnovers? Yeah, in terms of turnovers.
Well, that's not the question you asked, though. The question you asked was name the one thing.
I understand, but each person picks one. So Geoff went first. He picked turnovers. If you have anything you want to add, if you don't, then you could just pick your thing.
No, well, I mean, about turnovers, that kind of falls in line with that one thing. But I'm gonna generalize a little more because I could have easily said turnovers, and that would have been right on along with what I'm gonna say. I hate to sound like a broken record, but we lost because of low IQ basketball. We went out there, we played dumb. Okay. Some of the mistakes we made are it's just stuff when kids that are playing basketball learn those things day one in terms of the mistakes we made. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, and not just in game 6, but overall, when you look at, you look at guys like Josh Hart, or even Deuce McBride, right? There's this play in my head. I want to say it's game 4 where Deuce McBride was under the basket and he just handed the ball over to a pacer trying to pass to the corner. I want to say it's game 4, but I don't remember exactly what game that was. Those are things that people just don't do those things at the professional level, let alone in the Eastern Conference Final. You get that far, you make that mistake, you're guaranteed to pay for that mistake. You know what I'm saying? We made a lot of low IQ plays out there. It's unbelievable.
Did you see any in game 6?
Low IQ? Oh yeah, there's a lot of them in game 6. And there's a lot of them in, Brunson had a ton of turnovers out of nowhere. Like you said, the pass wasn't there. What are you making that pass? Or Mikal Bridges just throwing the ball away. Right? What are we doing? Or the fact, I'm gonna tell you, low IQ, right? The fourth quarter, right? Remember, Tyrese Halliburton, he didn't do nothing all game, right? Then the fourth quarter, all of a sudden, he scored like, I don't know, a bunch of points. Do you realize all those points, it's exactly the same play they ran? Every time it's the same thing. Carl Anthony Towns drop, give him like 5-7 feet. Every time it's the same thing. Like after the second one, you're like, dude, stay up on him. Like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not just him. Like somebody on the team should tell him, why are you dropping off so much? Because he keeps hitting those floaters or that little mid-range, and you're continuing to give him the same look like 4 or 5 times in a row. That's just stupid. That's just low IQ basketball. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's you, and if those guys, I'm sure they understand basketball more than most of us here, but you got to understand, once you allow a guy to get in rhythm, even by time 6 or by the 6th or 7th time, even if you're up on him because he's already in rhythm, now he's going to make the shot anyway with you in his face, and he's going to score because you allow him to get in that rhythm, right? And go back and watch the game. You're like, is this on a loop? Is this a rewind? They rewind this because you literally look at the same play again. Carl Anthony Towns, drop coverage, 5-7 feet back, allow Tyrese Halliburton to shoot. And he keeps hitting him, and you keep giving it to him. That's just, you can't win that way. You're just not going to win. It's just not smart basketball. There's there are a few other ones in game 6 also.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Geoff, any follow up to low
hit
IQ?
the nail on the head, man. Definitely low IQ ball, and which is strange because Brunson's not usually a low IQ player. And I don't necessarily consider OG and Bridges low IQ players. Josh Hart's always had a few low IQ moments, but Mitchell Robinson, I don't consider a low IQ player, and I don't consider McBride that. And so it's kind of a surprising thing that you have so many guys who aren't really known for low IQ basketball who that's exactly what they were guilty of.
Yeah.
You think the moment was too big for them though? Because there is, the expectations just like that. Maybe they always had those expectations, right? But from the fan base, once we got past Boston, the expectations like really shot up. Do you think that maybe there was a little tightness, a little, the moment just feeling just a little bit too big for some?
Maybe you have to lose to learn how to win sometimes. And Indiana was here last year and they got swept, right? And the moment was too big for them. And what is it that our coach always says? You lose, you learn, right? Well, they learned, and the moment wasn't too big for them this time. And yeah, we met in the semifinals last year, a little bit different, more stakes involved. They were more prepared. They had the experience behind them, and they used it to great effect. They punished us for every mistake that we made.
Yeah. So we talked about turnover. We talked about low IQ play, and just real quick before I get into my point, Geoff, there's a difference between having a low IQ plays in a game in a series. It doesn't necessarily make you a low IQ player overall. To your point, I think we've seen some low IQ plays from Brunson, from Hart. This was Hart's worst series. Like, this is the worst I've seen him play. But I never thought of Hart as a low IQ player. Now, he would have like a brain fart, like 1 or 2 a game. But this was like on a whole other level. And you could, maybe you can argue that the intensity of the moment, the bigness of the moment, maybe caused him to make more mistakes. But some of them, like the backdoor cuts, I'm like, listen, this is just regular basketball. You see your man, you see the ball, like that's nothing. So anyway, and we'll get into Hart. I want to talk about Tom Thibodeau, and I'm going to preface it by saying that I don't think, when I think about why the Knicks lost the series, I think coaching schemes and lineups were a part of it. I think player performances or lack thereof was another part of it. And I think the lack of execution was a part of it. Like, those are the three things that come to mind for me when I look at this series as a whole. And I'm not sure what percentages to put on each, but I could tell you, and I'm going to get into schematic stuff I would have liked to have seen, lineup stuff I would have liked to have seen, but you're not going to convince me that the sole reason the Knicks won this series was because of lineups. You're just not going to convince me of that. Do I think there's some lineups that could have helped the Knicks? Yes. Do I think there were some lineups where they had to kind of work uphill, so to speak? Yes, I do. But when you look at everything that went on in these series, the turnovers, the lack of execution, you're not going to tell me that was all due to lineups, right? I just don't believe it. And you guys don't have to agree with me. But I do want to get into some specifics, because when it comes to Tom Thibodeau, it's this general, he doesn't make adjustments. And then when you ask people for specifics, nobody can say specifics. So I want to talk specifically. Brunson, Nembhard doesn't usually do a good job on Brunson, but in this game 6, he was on fire defensively. Made it really, really difficult for Brunson. And what became clear to me was just the lack of offensive schemes to help Brunson help him get open. Like, to me, having 2 people come up to screen for him, to me, that was the worst thing. Because I just thought you just brought more of the Pacers into the picture, made it even more difficult for Brunson. He doesn't need help getting the ball over the half court. Yeah, I mean, if you want to send one person to screen and Nembhard has to go around, okay, fine. They were doing it at half court, pretty much, as soon as he crossed the line. So now he has 2, Mitchell Robinson, whoever was setting the other screen, and their man right over half court, basically trapping him. Right? And if you've ever played ball, you would, in situations like that, you would tell, just go, because you're bringing too many people. And that's how Nembhard was able to get one of those steals, because he was boxed in. He just came around and took the steal. But my point is, Nembhard, in my opinion, did an excellent job on Jalen Brunson defensively. And there was no answer as to how to help him get open. Now, playing him off ball. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Playing off ball, to me, is not Mikal Bridges bringing the ball up the court and then Brunson coming and get it. And now he's back to creating for himself and creating for to me, that's not playing off ball. Right? Playing off ball to me is, why can't we run the offense through Cat for a few sets? And where Brunson is really off ball, we're running it through Cat. He's the ones making the decision. And Brunson is there for a catch and shoot opportunity or a rotation, whatever it is. I don't know if Mikal Bridges can do this. And this may be one of the things we need to work on in the offseason in terms of roster. Can Mikal Bridges initiate action, run the offense where Brunson is really off ball? Like, it's like, if Brunson doesn't have the ball in his hand, creating for himself and others, that's the only way we can use him. That's it. There's no. So I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that we didn't lean into Cat. Now, I say that when Cat did have 19 shots in that game, I think he actually probably took the most shots. He took 19, and I think OG and Brunson, if I'm not mistaken, took 18. But taking shots and going to him and having them double team and playing off of him, to me, is just is something different. I just didn't feel like we prioritized Cat in this in this lineup. I also didn't like staying with the start. And we're talking particularly game 6. I don't know if it was the third quarter. The new starters, I believe it might have been. Just staying with that group, stayed like nothing was happening. We stayed with that group. He called the timeout, came back with the same group. They did go on a 7-0 run, but that was, that was the end of it. And to me, this was indicative of the series. Sometimes the lineup may work, sometimes it doesn't. I just feel like I need Tom Thibodeau to be quicker at moving on from lineups that don't work. Fine. If you see something and you call a timeout, you point it out to him, like, this is what I'm seeing, put that lineup there. If it's not working, then they need to come out. I just felt like it was close. And then the next thing you know, they just scored. The league getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the lineup just stayed the same. That is, I didn't quite get that. And listen, I understand the reasoning behind the double big lineup. And I think there were some games in which it was successful and some games and not so much. But I understand the reasoning. You want to lean into the rebound. You want to lean into those second chance opportunities. You want to lean into the defense, particularly to try to cover Cat. Like, I understand it. And we'll talk about this more when we talk about off-season changes. Maybe we need to lean into this 5-out offense. Maybe we need to just lean into, lean into that more. Maybe the defense probably won't be as great, but man, you could score points. And people talk about, the defense have to be better. The defense have to be better. I think the offense has to be better. So I'm just talking specifically in terms of Thibodeau for game 6, the schematics for Brunson, not leaning into Cat, staying with the starters too long. He didn't stay with Hart too long. Hart only had 22 minutes actually in game 6. And leaning into that, I think more Deuce McBride minutes. McBride had 11 minutes. DeLon Wright and Shamet had more minutes than Deuce. So, we'll talk about the series, but specifically for game 6, that was the issue. And I said initially, and I know this is a long way. I'm almost finished. I said initially that, you're not going to tell me we lost just because of the lineups, and I still believe that. But you can make it harder. You can make it harder for a team depending on the lineup that's in there. You get a turnover with a double big lineup, forget it. First of all, forget it, period. When we have a small lineup in there, forget it. A turnover with a double big lineup, it's a wrap. So, anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up in terms of Tom Thibodeau for game 6. And we'll talk about the series a little later. But I think these things is really about both game 6 and the series.
I have a question, but before, we have a few super chats. If you want to do them.
Yes, please.
You got it, or?
Oh, yes. Paris Doug, I appreciate you rocking with us. Thank you for the super chat, and just thank you for being with us all season long, Paris Doug. I say run it back. Okay, what are you gonna say?
No, I said thank you. Thanks to Paris Duggar, man. Like I feel like he's here every show. Scheduled, not scheduled, pop-up shows, surprise show, emergency. Like, he's always here, man. Shout out to you and thank you, man.
Yeah. I say run it back. Tibbs usually gets guys to improve their second year. I say Tibbs must change his ways, though. Both teams in the finals play 11 guys a hard 48 minutes. Tibbs did lose this in game 1 as a manager. Okay. Yeah, I agree about some things. I would like to see Tibbs change if he does return, and all indications look like he will. But there's some things I would like to see done different as well. Parrish Duggar.
Yeah, thanks, Parrish.
Next one, Andrew.
Next up, Jam Rock. Thank you for the $2 super chats. In all 4 playoff appearances, we've lost to a lower seed.
We beat a higher seed to
Okay,
get here.
I got you.
So, like, what? I think we're putting too much into
Yeah.
this. Literally,
I
the
will say
difference
this about
between the Knicks and the Pacers was 1 game in the standings. Literally.
Wasn't Cleveland a higher seed than you said?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, Cleveland.
When we beat Cleveland, they were
a higher seed than us.
They were higher seed than we were.
But I'm just saying there was 1 game difference between us and Cleveland. I mean Indiana rather.
And let me add this, Geoff. Indiana and OKC, the 2 teams that's in the finals since January 1st, those 2 had the best winning percentage in the entire NBA, if I'm not mistaken. So Indiana got off to a bad start, but since January 1st, they were better than the Knicks in winning percentage. They were better than the Knicks in offensive rating, defensive rating, and net rating, if I'm not mistaken, since January 1st. A lot of that gets lost because you're looking at the entire season. And when we think about the Knicks, we think about that historic offense that they had. But the Knicks' offensive rating plummeted after January 1st. And I think I read somewhere that it probably started around Christmas, that the offense took a turn. And a lot of that had to do with teams saying, whoa, Karl Anthony if we put our center on Karl Anthony Towns, it just creates too many problems. We're going to put our center on Josh Hart. We're going to put a wing on Cat. And that shut that offense down since January 1st. So say what you want to say about Pacers. The Pacers, they were better than the Knicks from January 1st on. Is that it?
Oh no, there's more.
Keep them coming.
Keep the Parrish Duggar again. Thank you for $2 super chat. So we lost game 6 because Cat and Brunson were tired and spent.
Okay. How was Halliburton and Siakam? I mean,
I think Brunson was tired because he had to work so hard to get his points.
I agree with that.
I think Brunson was tired.
Somebody's something is playing in the back. The show is playing in the background.
Yeah, don't know how. Yeah, so I think that's why Brunson was tired, because he had to work so hard. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. And like you said, Queen, I don't understand how they couldn't figure out a way to free him up. You see how he was struggling with Nimhart, and there was like no scheme to give him, or even if, like you said, just have somebody else initiate the offense. We couldn't even do that. So we really left him out there to get beat up.
And I do think this is something that's been all season long, right? And it just came back to bite the Knicks in this series in terms of our offense not being optimized enough. And maybe that's just, this is the first time Cat and Brunson is playing together. Maybe it's that. Remember Jaylen Brown and Tatum, it took some time. Maybe it's that. I'm not sure. But we're going to have to figure it out offensively. It can't be Brunson turning into Luka. Just can't.
Sim's in the chat, by the way. I don't know if you want to drop the link to him or not. I don't know if you saw.
Oh, okay. I think
next up,
sure can.
Okay. Another one from Parish Duggar. Thank you for $2 super chat. Says Game 5 was everything to JB. He needed Game 7 to win.
Where I'm at, I can't. Oh, he's already in.
Oh.
Oh, there he is.
Oh,
What's up, Sim?
how you doing?
What's going on?
I'm good.
I meant to
I'm
say
good. How you
backstage.
doing?
Good.
Oh, my
good.
bad. I just saw in the chat. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I meant to say backstage. I put in the chat, but I meant to say backstage.
Oh, because I was looking for the link. I can't even find it on.
Yeah.
I'm using my iPad.
Ah,
But we just gonna read this super chat, Sim, and then we're gonna get right to you.
all right.
You
All right,
said
Nick.
Game 5 was. I don't get it. Game 5 was everything to JB. He needed Game 7 to win.
I don't either. Parish.
I don't help us out, Parish. Help us out with this one. Appreciate the super chat. Shout out to Silk Sutton. Appreciate the super chat. Turnovers were high every game in the playoffs after Game 1 in Detroit. Every game was 14 to 17 turnovers. Every game. Well, thank you for pointing that out. It just seemed like it hurt us. It hurt us more in the in this series. But thank you for pointing that out.
Thanks, so Sudden, for the $5 super chat. All right, Mister. We got Sim in the house.
Yeah, I mean it's a simple
mouthpiece
question.
is yours.
We just asking why did the Knicks lose game 6? Basically, what went wrong, and each of us is picking something. But however you want to go at it.
I mean, game wise, I think 3 things: turnovers, poor transition defense, and free throws. I mean, that the transition defense.
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, we score and then they come right back and score. On so many occasions that was killing me. I mean, that was throughout the entire series. That was killing me.
Correct.
Right. And I just can't understand why we couldn't balance the floor. After we see the ball go in. Why we're not getting back and watching the person leak. Paying attention to the person who's leaking out. I don't know if it's players. I don't know if it's coaching, but at some point, you got to be able to, you got to recognize they're doing this on every play, and if they're doing it on every play, you should be watching it every play and not get caught going to sleep.
Yeah, for sure.
I think those 3 things really killed us in Game 6, but overall in the series, I feel like the lack of another facilitator really is what hurt us, right? I heard we were talking about being able to get Brunson loose, right? Because he played against such tough defense. I think they tried a few things. They would have McCall or Josh Hart bring up the ball, and then Brunson would curl around through the paint and then come back around. Maybe Cat or Mitch that was at the top of the key and fade to the 3-point line, and they toss it over that way, or they try to get him coming through the paint and then hand it off to him. But I think our ball handling from those wing players just weren't good enough because the pressure was so high, they weren't truly a threat. So it's like they were dribbling just to try to get Brunson the ball, but not really dribbling, not really handling the ball to create for themselves or anyone else.
That's a great point, Sam.
And so it was like, okay, well, you're going to dribble to the corner, the high corner near half court, and we're going to pressure you, and you're just trying to dribble with your back to the offense, figuring out a way to get Brunson the ball. And that was really kind of it. Instead of having someone else that could, all right, well, Brunson doesn't have the ball, but I can facilitate too, and I can create my own shot if I need to. I can get to the basket and hand it off, or I can get the play. I can get the offense going. And it just stalled us on so many cages. And like I just said, so Brunson had to work so hard. If he has the ball in his hands, he's working hard because Naismith is playing great defense on him, or Nembhard is playing great defense on him. And if he doesn't have the ball, he's running around trying to get the ball. You know, so yeah, he was tired. You know, I think
Yeah. So
you know,
oh, go ahead.
no, I think that lack of other person that can really facilitate, I think, was an issue in this series.
Sam, that's an excellent point, because what would help Brunson and Cat is those other guys being a threat. Then you can't load up on Brunson. You can't load up on Cat if those other guys are a threat.
Right.
So to your point, even if Mikal Bridges is handling the ball, he's not really handling it, to your point, to create for himself or to create for others. And maybe Brunson don't even get the ball this time down the court. Basically, he's handling them. Basically, his role is just to get the ball over half court so Brunson doesn't have to work, and then give it to him so he can work once we get over.
Exactly.
Once he gets over half half court. Yeah, in order for those guys to have space, these guys have to be legitimate threats. And that's different than scoring points. Like being a threat, where even if you're not scoring, they know they gotta be up. They gotta be up on you.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case.
Right. And it's like they weren't even trying to go to the basket a lot of times. It's just, you know, we're gonna dribble here until Brunson can get loose and find him the ball. You know, so they're not making themselves a threat. They're not you know, then we would get, you know, then we're trying to force him the ball. I mean, and there were times when I'm like stressed out because I'm thinking we're gonna go back court. Right, because you know we're trying to get Brunson the ball, and they're doing handoffs way out by half court, and screens way out by half court, and I'm like, why is the screen not coming in the back court if you're trying to bring him up? Like, why are we doing it right at half court? Doesn't make sense.
You're basically trapping him.
Right.
You basically, because we talked about, usually when that happens, you'd be like, just go, because you bring in too many people to me that I got to navigate. Like, just go. And they were doing it right when he got, like, I'm like, y'all playing for us, or y'all playing for the Pacers?
Right. Right when he come over half court. You know, yeah.
Yeah. We were, the last point we were talking about was Tom Thibodeau, and I think I was the only one that got a chance to speak, so we can go into this segment. I had issues with, well, you heard it, the lack of schemes for Brunson, but you broke it down eloquently, helped me understand why he had some of those challenges, not running the offense through Cat enough, in my opinion. Staying with some of these lineups too long that just wasn't working, and just sitting there watching the league just go up without calling a timeout or making a lineup change like that. That was probably, turnovers was the more frustrating thing. Like, if you want to see me like really, I was like, Jesus, like that was the most frustrating thing. Watching Cat in game, I don't know, one of those games, I was super frustrated. And Tom Thibodeau with some of these lineups, I was like, what are we doing here? But we'll go around the horn, but we're gonna let you go first, Sim, because we appreciate you stopping by. Just thoughts on Tom Thibodeau in Game 6 and the series, and then we'll go Ajay, Geoff, and then we'll go back around.
Yeah, I think he was definitely outcoached. I mean, Rick Carlisle is a tactician. Rick Carlisle knew everything that he wanted to do. You know, he had pinpointed times when he wanted to do certain things, you know, and sometimes, you know, Tibbs fell right into it. You know, Carlisle's straight up in game, can make great adjustments in game, and probably has adjustments ready. Where I don't know if Tibbs is a game-to-game adjuster. You know what I'm saying? So I think, you know, Rick Carlisle really did coach a great series. You know, Tibbs timeouts. Yeah, there were definitely times when he needed to call timeouts. And when they were going on a run, I don't know if he was trying to save them, expecting that the team was going to come back, and so that he would have timeouts in his pocket. I don't know. Then I thought, he was grasping at straws, trying to find lineups that can really work against the Pacers. You know what I mean? Trying to find some things that could work. And I mean, when you look back at it, I think that kind of told the story of what was going to happen in the series, because he's trying to find when you're trying to find lineups that's going to work, you're kind of desperate, and grasping at straws. I don't know if and I said this before on one of my shows. I don't know if maybe this is, I think, Tibbs' second time in the Eastern Conference Finals. He made it there once with the Bulls way back in whatever it was. Sometimes you got to get there and have that experience being there for a few years in a row before you can calm down and be able to coach. I don't know. But I think he definitely got out coached by Rick Carlisle. Definitely. That being said, if we secure game one, it's probably a 7-game series. If we secure game one, because after game one, the series basically went back and forth, right? I mean, because for all intents and purposes, when you look at in the playoffs, game one, even though the Knicks didn't win the game, it was like a win for the Knicks, right? It's just the Pacers stole it, because the Pacers still had to make all the adjustments. The Knicks could have looked at it and said, just do what we did and then finish.
Correct.
Right? Where the Pacers are like, we got to do something else, because we were down in double digits the entire game. But we came back. And so now they made the adjustments for game two, game two, and then after that it flip-flopped. They, Knicks win, they win, Knicks win, they win. Right? And so if you win game one, you're probably in a game seven, and who knows, maybe the Knicks win game seven. I don't know. So even, with Tibbs being out-coached, this series should have been a 7-game series if it weren't for the last 2 minutes and 33 seconds or whatever it is of game one. And, you pull that out,
Yeah. Agreed. Ajay, your thoughts on Tibbs in game 6 and the series overall?
Well, Queen, you mentioned one of your issues with Tibbs is that he doesn't know when to, he stays with a lineup too long. But I'm going to say the opposite is also true. He doesn't know when to keep a lineup out there, because there are many times we've had lineups, and not the sexiest lineups, because you've had lineup with just Cat and Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright, Deuce, whoever else, whatever he could throw in there. And those lineups build up like 7-8 point leads, right? And then he yanks them and then comes back with the popular lineup and all that stuff. And then it's just several times throughout the series, those guys, those lesser known guys, they give us the lead, and then we come back with Jalen Brunson and whatever and whatnot. And I'm not saying keep Brunson on the bench, but there are a lot of times throughout the series where Brunson on the bench, we built up a lead, and you bring Brunson back and we lose the lead. Okay. And again, it's just he couldn't find the right mix at some point to when to have Brunson, because there are lineups where you have Brunson, and then we build up on a lead also. But who do you put with Brunson and who do you put with Cat? You know what I'm saying? So he couldn't figure that out. And this is one of and Tibbs, he makes adjustments, but he does it from game to game.
Mm-hmm.
He's really good at it from game to game. But when you play in an elimination game, there is no game to game. You make an adjustment, but it's for next season, because there is no next game. Do you know what I'm saying? So the last game 6, it looks like a scramble, and I feel like at some point he just gave up, right? Because at some point And when I say gave up, not that he threw the game, but he didn't know what else to try, right? Because in the third quarter, at some point, we needed stops. But you didn't have your best defenders on the court, and that happened in game one also. I mean, game one, the end of game one, on top of, besides the fact that all we had to do was hold the ball, but you also need defenders like to defend the 3-point line. Literally, all we had to do was defend the 3-point line and hold the ball for our 24 seconds of possession. We'd have easily won that game very comfortably. Okay.
Mhm.
But instead, we were rushing, trying to score, missing, and giving them more time to go back the other way and score. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I don't know if that's coaching or the players, but to me, that's a little bit of both. Because if you see that happening as the coach or somebody, like he's got 100 people in that coaching staff, somebody, Rick Brunson, like somebody say, call a timeout. Let's explain to these guys, kill the clock. Manage the clock. You're going to win this game. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody in that crew should have pointed that out. It was a very easy game. There's a reason why it only happened one in 994 time, whatever. It's because it's very hard to lose that game. And we managed to do that. You know what I'm saying? So,
I mean, go ahead.
No. I was going to say it's one of those things where you go back, and I understand, I'm not a coach. So in the heat of the game, I don't expect, maybe not Tom Thibodeau, but somebody in the back, like the dude with the iPad that could quickly tell him, challenge this, don't challenge this. That guy should be like, he's looking at the clock. These guys, they looking at it. Somebody should be like, hey, coach, this is what we got to do to win this game.
Yeah. Let me ask you, because you were talking about the lineups, when to bring Brunson back, Cat. How much of it is a team structural issue too? Because it's very hard. Just like speaking as a coach, certain players when you have them in the game, like there's an expiration on how long they're going to play. So you're trying to maximize not how long they're going to play, how long they're going to be able to perform. Right? You're trying to maximize it. And then, okay, we're about that time where we're going to get diminishing returns. Let me get my guys in. And then, like, sometimes when the bench was in, Halliburton wasn't in. Right? And so now they didn't have a facilitator on the floor. And so, it was tougher for them to score. And so when Halliburton came back in, Tom Thibodeau kind of does I'm going to match who you have out there on the floor. So Halliburton's in. And then he bring Brunson back in. But some of it is because having Cat and Brunson on the floor gives you, some defensive problems. So some of it is coaching. Some of it is a roster. Personnel.
Well, what I would do in that case, right? And sometimes, and I think Geoff mentioned that, right? So Rick Carlisle, he'll do things to like kind of bait you into reacting to what he does. Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes let DeLon Wright go in there, maybe get 1 or 2 stops against Tyrese Halliburton. You never know. He's got size, he's got, he's a very good defender. Sometimes you just fall back a little bit and see how especially you built a 8-9 point lead, so you have a little breathing room. I'm not saying let it run, but 1 or 2 possessions, see where it takes you. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes too, I think with the roster, there is a trust thing with Tibbs, which I don't understand. Like, and I'll give you an example. It's the first that popped in my head, right? Precious Achiuwa is sitting on the bench, right? But you have Siakam is like literally nobody could guard him. A lot of times they end up switching him, put Josh Hart on him. We know Josh Hart cannot defend Siakam. This is not like literally for the past 3 years we've seen this. Every time we play the Pacers, Josh Hart's on the floor. Guess who ends up on him? But this time, I mean, granted, a couple of times Cat ended up on him. But I would try like a bigger body, just for a couple of possessions to see what it is. Precious is a pretty good defender, and he defends many positions. We've seen this. He last season he did it for us. So I would put him in there. Listen, just maybe get 1 or 2 stops against Siakam and let him think about it. You know what I'm saying? But you got to try. You can't go with the thing that doesn't work and you keep going because that's your guy. I understand. This is the guy we have because we don't have. I always thought that was a problem. Josh Hart starting at the power forward. We talked about that many times. He's a great player. He's just it's a structural flaw to have him as the power forward.
I don't even think he's the power forward, but it doesn't matter. Wherever he's at, they switch. I think is the issue.
Yeah, it's an issue.
Wherever he's at,
but still, as the coach, you still have. Yes, there is an issue with the roster, but you still have other tools at your disposal that I felt that he could have tried to use but didn't bother. Okay, so I mean it's a team structure problem that they're gonna have to look to address in the offseason. So.
Yeah. Before we get to Geoff, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Because I'm having some audio issues on this end.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. In terms of structural issues, it's like Brunson was having a hard time with Nembhard. We wasn't getting anything from Brunson. But we weren't getting stops either. So we're like, Cat is dropping. I'm not sure that's the plan for him to drop, but he kept dropping. So you like, nah, take him out the game. Like he's not executing the game plan, take him out. But then you're not getting any scoring from Brunson though.
Right.
So now this is what makes it hard. You know, if I take Cat out because he's given up points, it's not just him, but they were picking on him, right? Putting him in action on the pick and roll, and they were smart to do it. He's dropping, they dropping points, right? But you're like, nah, you got to take him out. Put in Mitch. You're going to be better on the pick and roll. But then what happens on the offensive end? And this is what we talk about with how it makes it, these decisions, you know, and to your point, Ajay, I think you're right. And Carlisle did this. I'm going to bring in this rookie Walker. Was it Walker? Whatever his name is. Let me just give him three possessions on Brunson. You know what? Let me bring in Bradley, see if what he can do with Mitchell Robinson in terms of, you know, size. So I agree with you. You know, let's try Siakam for a few possessions. Precious for a few possessions. But when you do that, you also got to, every move, you got to also think of every defensive move. You got to think about how it impacts you offensively. Every offensive move or lineup, you got to think about how it impacts you defensively, right? So you try to, you know, oh, we need defense. Let's do it. Then the offense, you know, that's just how the Knicks are, you know, that's just how the Knicks are built. And we could talk about how talented this Knicks team is, and it is. But it's like Tom Thibodeau got to nail these lineups for this team to be successful. He got to just nail it. You know, that speaks to structure too.
Guys, I know it's hard, but that's his job.
Yeah,
he's the manager. That is his job.
But if you don't have the players, then it's hard to do that. Like,
no, but Sim, you got to know what your players can do, and not necessarily
I get that.
Not necessarily the other team. Like I'll give you an example, right? And Queen, you're right. But sometimes too, when you throw this guy in, like you said, you throw this guy in for defense, you got to worry about the offense, right? Offense, you got to worry about defense. But there's another thing, right? When you throw him in, the other team now has to worry about him because they don't scout those other guys as extensively as they scout the main guys. So when you throw that wrinkle in there, it might work to your advantage, right? Case in point, I don't even remember his name that hit 2 3-pointers in Game 6.
Thomas Bryant.
Thomas Bryant. Yeah,
Thomas
Bryant. So listen, he's been in the league forever, but there's nobody he's an afterthought, right? Because he hasn't really played in the series. And then all of a sudden they throw him in there.
Well, he was playing. I thought he was playing.
No,
I thought he played in the beginning, and then he
did play.
Hurt,
he played it,
and then
he played.
He got hurt or something, and then that's when Bradley came in.
Actually, I don't think he got hurt. I think
something happened.
I think they just put Bradley to match up
foul
with Mitch.
trouble. Or he had foul trouble, I think, in the
one
second
game. He had foul trouble. Yeah. Then they put in Bradley to match up. So then he comes in there all of a sudden. But there's another guy that was hurt. I forgot his name. The guy with the hair, with the dreads.
The rookie. Is his last name Walker? What's his name?
Jerace
There was a
Jerace Walker. Yeah.
He didn't play the first couple of games, and all of a sudden they throw him in there. We just don't know what to do with him. So it throws a wrinkle in the other team because you're. Go ahead. I was gonna say, because you're introducing another play that we're not used to, that the opposing team's not used to, like they don't really plan for. And then listen, all these guys have to do is, case in point with Bryant, like 2 3-pointers with backbreakers. That's all those guys have to do. He didn't have to do anything else. You know what I'm saying? So if you introduce like a Tyler Kolik, I'm just throwing a name out there, a Pacome Dadier, it could have been 1 or 2 3-pointers, and then it breaks it. I'm not saying they should have. I'm just saying sometimes you just got to give it a shot, 1 or 2 possessions.
I hear what you're saying, but listen, there's no element of surprise. So it's not like, Thomas Bryant got those threes because they didn't know who he was. No, he got their threes because it was a breakdown in execution. Because the play is the play. Whether that's Obi Toppin out there, whether that's Thomas Bryant out there, that's their play. It's just different people. They just run in the play. That's a breakdown in execution. That's not like an element of surprise. Like, oh, we didn't know who Bryant, who Bryant was. And maybe you feel like, well, I'm not going to go out on him because I don't think he can hit the 3. Okay, fine. Once he hit 1, you're like, look, we got to rotate, over. So to me, I think that was an execution issue more so than, who is this guy?
Right.
We don't know what he can do.
Bryant played 13 minutes in game 1, right, and then I think in game 2 is when he was in some foul trouble, and so
when did we make the lineup change? Was it game 3?
I think it was 4.
No, I think it was 3.
It was 3.
I think it was game 3.
Okay,
I think it was game 3, and I think they put. At that point, they didn't put him right, Sim. And you're looking at the minutes. I think at that point, they put in the bigger body in there too.
In game 2, he played 4 minutes, so he was in. Oh, he wasn't really in foul trouble. Wait a minute, Thomas Bryant had 2 fouls. In game 2, they played a little more Tony Bradley. He played 8 minutes. Probably because his he could box out Mitch a little bit better.
But Queen and
then we got to get to Geoff because he didn't get a chance to talk about today. So go ahead.
One quick thing. I was gonna say the element of surprise is not that you don't know who Bryant is. It's the fact that they put him in there, because he doesn't usually play. That's the surprise. It's not that you don't know who he is, because typically figure they'd have put Mathurin or TJ McConnell, like the usual suspects, right? But then he throws somebody out there like out of the blue. You know who the guy is, but it's just like kind of weird to match that. Go ahead, Geoff. Sorry.
I don't necessarily.
Did you forget the topic, Geoff? Did you forget the topic?
I'm good. I don't necessarily agree with Aj though in this respect, and I'm curious at Sim's thoughts because he's the actual coach. But I feel like sometimes when you play not to lose instead of playing to win, that is worse. So you said just hold the ball for 20, and it's easy to say that, but when you play with that mindset of not to lose, I think it feeds the comeback even further. I'm not saying that the Knicks did everything right. They collapsed and all those other things, but I'm not sure that just holding on to the ball because is the right. I mean, I think you just continue to play your game and you play smart. But that's something the Knicks didn't do. We didn't play smart. We didn't take care of the ball. We didn't make our free throws. So all of those things accounted for the loss. But I to just sit there and say, okay, just stall the ball. I mean, I think if you play not to lose, then you typically lose is what I think. And I understand from a mathematics, it's easy to say in a vacuum, yeah, just dribble out the clock every time. Well, the Pacers aren't just going to stand there and let you dribble out the clock.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to have to shoot the ball. If you're shooting the ball with the clock low, it's probably going to be a long rebound. It's going to lead to opportunities also. So I think from my coaching experience, which is limited, and I'm not near as good as Sim or probably even Queen, I think you continue to have to play. You can't just say, okay, we're going to shut it down and we win. I don't think it's like that. I don't think that's how it works, but maybe I'm incorrect about that. But
Jeff, they would foul you, Jeff. That's all. They'd foul you and you just have to hit the free throws.
I mean, Jeff, I agree with you because I coached the game. It was a championship game, and they started stalling in the second quarter. And when they started stalling, it forced us to switch our defense, and it blew up everything that they did because they were in this mode of trying to stall because they had like an 18-point lead, so they were trying to run out the clock early. All right, and they did it all through the third quarter, and I'm like, what are they doing? And we just kept creating turnovers and our way back in because now they weren't in the mindset of being aggressive anymore.
That's my point.
Right. But you got to be smart about it. I don't think you take a shot with 7 seconds into
exactly.
the shot.
We were rushing. We were rushing the shots and missing, and not getting the rebound. So they were getting the rebound.
I get that. And here's the thing: we can dissect every decision that Thibodeau made, and a lot of those criticisms are spot on. We can criticize the fact that OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges couldn't hit a corner three to save their lives the entire series, and that's a fact. We can criticize the fact that Jalen Brunson turned the ball over far more than he's used to and was very careless with it, right. and that's a fact. And we can criticize Karl Anthony Towns because he didn't make the right coverage on. He dropped too often on pick and roll. You can criticize Deuce McBride for shooting 9 for 27 from the field for the entire series. You can criticize Mitchell Robinson for not getting back on D. And all of these criticisms are valid. But what I like to say is it's like to consider the Knicks like a windshield to a car, right? And the wind is pushing against it, and you don't know necessarily which rock it is that's going to chip the windshield and cause it to break and cause it to crack. But all of those different problems were pressures on that windshield that weakened it, that strained it, that caused it to be susceptible to that small pebble that normally when it kicks up wouldn't do anything. But because of all the other things that were out there, and look, all of those things are true, and all of those things are the reason we lost the series. It's a combination of everything that y'all are talking about. They're all true. And depending upon who you like and who you dislike, what your narrative is, you're going to assign more blame to that person than the other. Now, Karl Anthony Towns was the only person in the series for the Knicks with a positive plus minus. There are some out there who don't like Towns who are going to tell you that Karl Anthony Towns is the reason we lost this series. Josh Hart had his best season in the history of his game. He had more triple doubles for the franchise than anybody in the history of the franchise in a single season. You can place the blame on Josh Hart if you want to. It's so I think that we get into this it's like the blame is a pie, and we want to make sure that the person that we dislike gets the biggest slice of it. And I'm not saying that to diminish anyone's points. Like I just think that we kind of get caught up and carried away in all this stuff, and there's truths to everybody's point, and that's what I'm getting at. The Knicks' failures were Tom Thibodeau's fault. They were. But the Knicks' failures were also Jalen Brunson's fault. They were also Karl Anthony Towns' fault. They were also Mikal Bridges' fault. They were everybody's fault. And you know why? Because you win as a team and you lose as a team. And it's a team sport. You know, we can go through all of this stuff. But the Knicks as a group were flawed. And I think that what we saw that the Pacers were able to expose the flaws of this team in a way that nobody else was able to do. And part of the problem, another thing that I'll add to everything that was just said, because this is really answering the question that you asked. I know it was a while before I got to speak.
That's fine. Take your time. Do your thing.
But when you have the double big lineup in there, just send Robinson to the offensive glass. Everybody else has to be getting back. We can't be sending 4 people to crash, because make or miss, the Pacers are getting the ball out of the net and they're chucking the ball 3/4 of the way up the court. And we've got 2.5 players in the backcourt every single possession. And it's a fast break. It's 4-on-3. And it makes it easy for them to get points. Look, they shot 50% from the field and 50% from 3 in every single game that they won. Every single game. So it comes down to an ability to get stops. And we have a very strange problem on this team in that our all defensive lineup can't score the ball to save their lives. And our all offensive lineup can't stop anybody to save their lives. And so, and having said all that, if Tyrese Halliburton's balloon shot falls outside the rim, the Knicks probably win the series anyway. Because I honestly believe that game 2, and I've seen many people in the chat say it, and I've heard it echoed, it's a letdown game, right? The Knicks did not do a good job. It was a gut punch game, and it was the day after, and they were still on the mat a little bit in game 2. And it's those little things. But I think if you get game 1 like you're supposed to, we definitely choked that game away. But look, that just tied the game. We still had 5 extra minutes of overtime that we could have come back and taken the game, and we did not, right?
We had a 6-point lead in overtime, I think.
Yeah.
I'm still playing like we was down 6, though.
Yeah. Right.
Speed up, rush in, take. I'm like, yo, we up 6. We're not down 6.
So you have all of these things. So I guess the question becomes, do you replace the windshield that has the crack in it, or do you buy yourself an entirely new car?
New car? Ooh. Or new windshield?
Do you you said do you replace the windshield, cosmetic, run it back and all that? Right. Or do you get a new car? You change, you send someone out, you get a big name back, you change everything that's going on. Because these are the decisions that people are talking about. And look, we're very close. Like, Jeff, we're this close.
You call safe life repair, safe life replace.
You know what?
Ahead,
when we were talking about the roster construction, last year's team with Mikal Bridges and probably not Hartenstein, just after the Hartenstein is gone and Mikal Bridges is traded for, even that team, I think, wins this series. I do.
Yeah, that's a dog team, though.
I 100% agree with that.
Against Indiana.
I think we win this series easy with that team, because not only are we deeper, but we have way more switchability defensively, right? I mean, the first lineup would have been Brunson, Bridges, OG, Randall, Mitch. You can, you have the length to cover for Brunson. You got at least 2 or 3 guys in that lineup that can help guard Siakam, 2 or 3 guys that can guard Halliburton. You have a guy in Randall who can help relieve the pressure from Brunson and handling the basketball. That team, I think, wins this series easy.
And yeah, you got Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, Deuce
Coming off the
McBride coming
bench.
off the bench. With
Does that team without a 5 for 60% of the 80% of the season win 50 plus games?
Maybe. I mean that team was still pretty deep, you know, because you had, you know, you would have had to use Precious and Huck Porty. I mean, Precious played when Hartenstein and I think Mitch were out the year before. I think Precious played and did did a decent job. I mean, look at that team. You know, before Mikal Bridges was there, won 50 games with all kind of injuries. You know, I think that team. Now, do they beat Boston? I think they beat Boston too, because Boston was, you know, in disarray a little bit. I think that team is in the NBA Finals right now. Probably lose to OKC because OKC is, you know, really, really
OKC is
good.
actually quietly one of the best teams in the history of the NBA.
You know,
you look at the number of wins they won in the games they won in the regular season, and then you look at what they've done in the playoffs to this point. Literally, legitimately one of the best runs, top 5 all-time NBA regular season and thus far in the playoffs.
But Jeff, not to go away from everything, don't underestimate the Pacers against OKC.
Okay, now the Pacers are good.
Real quick,
Pacers are good.
Pacers are good. And Rick Carlisle is great. Yeah, so you know, but and even that Mikal Bridges trade was made with last year's team in mind, in my opinion. You know, when you made that trade for Mikal Bridges, it was to fit in with that group. So
Sim, you think so that cat thing came like at the last minute and they just pulled the trigger on it, or
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I think that the Towns move was built with longer term visions in mind. I don't think they wanted to pay Randall max money. And so, and right or wrong, I'm not saying. I'm saying the Knicks didn't want to lock in Randall on a long-term big contract, so they traded it for Towns. They changed things up, but they got in a player who is supremely talented, another all-NBA talent, and a guy that if it doesn't work out, you can still flip him for value. It's not like not like Towns is highly respected around the league. If you wanted to change up and move him, and I'm not, again, David Smith, relax. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that if they decided to do it, there would be plenty of people who would be interested in acquiring a player of that skill level, talent, ability.
That's a great point.
At the contract number that he's at, because he makes max money, but he's a max offensive player.
Jeff, and some teams have a roster where he would fit more, like they're more defensive roster where Cat being a weak defender is not going to bother them.
This is an interesting question. Like, I want to get into, before we get out of here, I do want to talk about Brunson in this series, and I want to talk about Cat in this series, and I want to talk about this pairing in terms of whether or not it's just a matter of time, or whether you've seen enough to know that you don't think this is the best.
See one.
No, I'm just. It's just a question. But let's start with Brunson in terms of what you saw, Game 6 and the series. What did you see from him? How did you think he played? Did he meet your expectations or not? Jeff, we'll start with you.
You know, we're spoiled with Jalen Brunson. You know, a bad Jalen Brunson game is better than good games for a lot of folks. Like, let's remember we had Chris Duhon as our point guard once upon a time. And Jalen Brunson is a flat out leader. He's been here for 3 seasons now. We have our floor has been the second round of the playoffs. His numbers in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think he averaged over 30 points and 7 assists per game on like a 63% true shooting percentage. So there aren't very many who have done it better than that. There just aren't. Like the turnovers are frustrating, and we have this expectation that he's just going to put on his cape and he's going to fly us to the, you know, to the fortress of solitude and rescue us, and everything is going to be fine. But, you know, again, it's about everybody performing at their maximum level. And look, the Pacers did a fabulous job of hunting Brunson defensively. I think they really targeted him well. But again, I think if you have Brunson with 4 defenders, you can't really do that. And if you have Cat with 4 defenders around him, you can't really do that. But then if you're the Knicks, that means you don't have your 2 best players on the floor at the same time. And so, you know, I don't know too many coaches who are going to say, yeah, I'm not going to play my 2 All-NBA players together. Like, you got to find a way to make that work. And the Knicks just didn't. You know, Brunson had some very frustrating, uncharacteristic plays in this series. I think sometimes he took the matchups a little too personally. Like, I think he wanted to prove that he could use his immense skill to beat Naismith or Nembhard or Halliburton or whoever. You know, I know you're sick of me saying the Brunson Towns pick and roll, but how about a Brunson Towns pick and roll where you actually pass the ball to your big man? Like, I feel like there was no synergy and connection between our 2 stars. Like, where were the assists? That should be his prime. Like, Stockton had Malone. He knew where his assists were coming from. You just throw the ball to him, and it's a bucket. He's like one of the top 5 point scorers of all time in the league, right? You know where your assists are coming from. Well, you've got a 50, 40, 80 guy who's 7 foot tall. How about you pass him the ball in a position where he's in a position to score? I mean, so I think that his process at times was not good, but the other fact of the matter is when we were winning, Brunson was playing really well for the most part. Like I think there's another level that his game has to get to. And I think that other level is some of the things that Sim and Tony and I talked about on their show about him learning to be a better passer. Like, he has averaged more assists this season than he ever has before in his career at 7.5. I don't think he's ever going to be a Halliburton 11, 12 assist a game guy, but maybe he gets up to 9. Maybe he learns this team and this process and how better to walk the tightrope between taking over and letting my big man eat and letting my other players, you know, get their touches and those sorts of things. So I think it's still a learning process for him with this group that, frankly, you know, was put together on the fly. So he's having to learn Towns and you know, and OG still feels like he doesn't get enough touches. If he doesn't touch the ball in 5 possessions, he starts to sulk a little bit. So you have all of this stuff and then you're incorporating McCall, and then what do you do about Josh Hart, who won't shoot and can't shoot? And then, you know, there's a lot of difficulties, but again, and personally, the question to me is, can you build a championship team with Brunson as your best player? And I still think that the answer is yes. In fact, I think you can build a championship team with Towns and Brunson on the same team. I just don't think that we have that roster construction currently. Not that we can't get there.
Yeah, and to that point, is the best way to build around them to lean into the 5-out offense or to lean into a defensive lineup around them? Listen, Geoff, we talked about this, or at least I talked about this before the season. I said, we're going to really get a chance to see Brunson. You know, Tatum went through it, Embiid went through it. Like, he's a darling. You know, he was the Knicks' darling. I said, once we become a championship contender and we start getting deep into the playoffs, things may turn on Brunson if he doesn't, you know, if he doesn't play well. The other thing we talked about was his process. You know, I mean, like Ajay say, listen, for assists, the other player has to make the basket. So you really want to look at pass percentage and things like that to see is he really, distributing the ball. But his floor game and his process, and it's not just when should I score, when should I get so and so involved. It's thinking the game. It's like, the last three possessions, we didn't really get a good shot. I'm going to make sure we get a good shot this time. You know what? I'm going to come out. I'm going to make sure this person gets established in the game because I know I can get my shot. It's like being able to ask yourself in every possession, what does the team need this possession? What does the team need this possession? And when you think about the really good ones, they are thinking the game. They're not just playing the game and reacting. They're thinking the game. And I said this before the season started. This is where Brunson, if he's going to be the point guard, and that's another question to be had. Or are we looking at an Allen Iverson situation where we got to move him to the 2 and bring in a point guard? Is it too soon to have that? I think it's a little too soon. But that question is on the table, and I don't see people talking about that a lot. Do eventually we have to move them to 2? Because there's been good scoring. Like you think about Marbury. Marbury was like, to me, I don't think he has to be Halliburton. There have been scoring point guards where their scoring opened things up for everybody else. So you don't have to be a Halliburton to be a really good scoring point guard. But you gotta know, like, oh, they I got them in the mixer right now. All eyes on me. It's a lot of attention. This should open up a lot for my teammates right now. Where you playing, you a maestro now. I'm gonna go for it this time. They on me. You. It's like a yo-yo. Nah, Brunson is working way too hard, and sometimes it's unnecessary. It's unnecessarily working too hard. He doesn't have to. So I think that's Brunson growing up. That's Brunson growing as a point guard. That's Brunson growing as the lead guard on a championship. That's different than being the best player on an up-and-coming team than being the best player on a championship, because the pressure is different. The microscope is different. The lights are brighter. The margins are thinner. It's very different. And this is where he finds himself. Sam, your thoughts on Brunson, and then Ajay.
Queen,
Yeah.
Queen, I'm sorry, Sam. Before you go, there's like 100 people listening or watching, not hit 101 people not hitting the like button. There's not a lot of Knicks shows going on tonight, so let me see you smash that like button, man. Let's go. And Queen, just so you know, Trey's backstage, so
Let him in.
Yeah. But again,
let him in.
Oh,
I can't really see. I'm on my iPad. Y'all gotta help me out. People in the background, let them in.
My man. Brunson. I think Brunson needs a facilitator next to him. I think like you said, Queen, that's not that right now that it's not a big conversation. But I really think Brunson needs, just let Brunson go ahead and be the scorer, and let the other guy, that facilitator, I prefer a tall guy that can see over the defense, and also help to play defense because he's got some length. I think you need to have good length around Brunson to be the distributor, to get Bridges involved, to get OG involved, to run some screen and roll with Karl Anthony Towns. I'm not saying Brunson wouldn't do those things as well, but you have that other guy that's kind of the brain on the floor, and you just let Brunson go loose and get what he needs to get. You know what I mean? I think that would, because I think Josh Hart isn't that guy. He makes too many mistakes. You know what I'm saying? He makes too many mistakes.
And he doesn't shoot well either. So
yeah, and he's not heady at all. He's just a garbage guy. A cleanup guy type of guy, and transition guy. So I love everything that he does, but he's just not that guy. You know what I mean? I think if you get in that starting lineup a guy that can facilitate for you, facilitate the game, what's his name goes to the bench. Josh Hart goes to the bench. I think that can unlock the offense.
Sim, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I know what you're saying. You want an Eric Snow in here, like kind of.
There you go. Yeah, something like somebody like that. Yep.
Wasn't that the idea behind bringing Mikal Bridges here? I mean, not just for his defense, but also to kind of run the offense, because he did that in Brooklyn.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that was the idea, but I don't think, from what I've seen, I don't think he can do it at that level. Yeah, I don't think he's. First of all, Mikal Bridges, to me, I feel like he's afraid of contact. Like he gets in the lane and he sees people around him. He's either dribbling out or fading way back to shoot it. He won't even go straight up in the midst of defenders there to try to make a layup. So when defenses get real aggressive with him, I don't feel like he really knows what to do when defenses get that aggressive in playoff level basketball, right? Regular season level basketball, maybe. But in the playoffs, when the refs are letting contact go, I'm not sure he knows what to do. And I feel like we need somebody who knows how to handle that kind of pressure in that situation.
That's why he hasn't missed a game since high school, Sim. That's why they call him the Iron Man, man. That's why they call him Cal Ripken of the NBA. Because he don't like contact.
He's staying away from it. He's staying away from it. He drives me crazy. Because he penetrates, he gets in the paint. I'm like, go up. And then he fades way back or dribbles it out or passes it. I'm like, goodness, you're right there. He drives me crazy.
Layup to shoot a 10-foot fadeaway.
Maddening.
Right. So I think, I think Brunson in the series was trying to figure out, was trying to figure out what to do, first time playing, at least as the lead guard, the guy in this level of playoffs, what I'm saying? This at this level. So I think he's still trying to figure out, what to do. How do I get myself free? How do I handle this type of aggressive defense? Because Naismith was playing some great defense on him. I think the team overall, which I think everyone's pointed out, Geoff, I know pointed it out, is new. When you look at Karl Anthony Towns, Bridges, even the bench guys that were playing campaign, right? Those guys are new to the basketball team. OG came halfway through last season. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot that this team needs to learn about each other. And from a coaching standpoint, when you get to this level, you start to learn who can perform under pressure, who can't perform under pressure. Who can, what are the tendencies of my players? How do they act on the bench? Do they, who's getting stressed? Who, all those things you start to learn about your players, that you don't learn until you get into the situation. And then you start to learn about it and say, okay, next time we're in this situation, I know I can't have this guy do that because he can't handle it. I can have this guy do this because he's good at it, because, the higher you go, the pressure goes different and everyone's going to respond differently. So I think there's a lot of learning that the team is doing. And the Pacers were there last year, right? They learned a little bit about how the team, Rick Carlisle, I'm sure, learned a little bit about how they handle pressure, how they handle playing at that level, and was able to use that in this series, you would think, and hopefully Tom Thibodeau and the players will learn from this and be able to use it next season. Because there's a lot to learn from the series about themselves. A lot.
Let me ask you this, Sim. How much of Brunson's play in this series had to do with just him and his process? And how much of it was the lineups and just who he was in there with? And that could be either the lineups Tom Thibodeau chose to put in with him, or it could just be how this team was constructed. Was it was it constructed in a way, or were the lineups out there in a way that was conducive to him being his best self? I guess is the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I think everything with this team now, especially this year, revolves around Jalen Brunson, right? He's got the ball in his hand just about every single time down the floor. So he's empowered to do basically whatever he wants, and I think he kind of takes that personally, like I got to get it done, and especially on nights when nobody else is hitting, I think he feels like, oh, okay, it's really on me to get it done. You know what I mean? I got to make sure I'm scoring the ball until somebody else can get into the flow, and then it ends up being a lot of times standing around waiting for Brunson to make a decision as to what it is that he's going to do. So I think some of it is like his process of learning, because regardless, what the plays are. You're the guard out there, and you can call them. You can say, okay, let me set this up so we can, this is what they're doing. Let me set this up, and counteract what they're doing this way. So I think it is a process of him just learning how to delegate duties on the team, and figure out, like you said, thinking the game while he's playing the game, and figuring out what you need at this point. I think it's a process for him, because this is what his third year being in this position, right? Like being the leader, the straight up leader. He's been in the league 6 years, but it's only been 3 of them where he's actually the guy. So that's definitely a learning process.
Right.
And then with the team built around him, it's kind of constructed to almost like the Cavs were built around LeBron. It's kind of constructed that way. So, I think he's got to figure out, and with help from Tom Thibodeau and the coaching staff, the best way to utilize the entire team. But going back, this team with this current construction is really its first year together, and so there's a lot that they have to learn. To make it to the, win 2 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, and this close to it being Game 7 and maybe even winning the series, it's not a bad season. Just gotta, I think a lot to learn. And Brunson's in that process. And the one thing I would say about Brunson is he's been like a sponge, right? Learning, figuring things out, always responds, always finds a way to come back better. So, I believe that he'll come back better.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think for him, it's not even about his skills. It's here. Yep. This is where he needs to get better for the Knicks to win the championship.
Yep.
Trey, your thoughts on Brunson in this series?
Still averaged 30 points a game in this series, if I'm not mistaken. I got a message for the people out there in social media that have been resurfacing Becky Hammond's comments from, I think that was December of 23, I believe it was. Look, she was right in what she said, that it's difficult for smaller guards to win championships. The problem is that it's not what she said, it's when she said it. She said it at a time when the Knicks was, if I'm not mistaken, they were kind of on a roll, first, half of the year. I didn't think that conversation about, could the Knicks win a title back then was warranted when that team at the time was just still trying to figure some things out. There were still some doubters about Jalen Brunson and his game even before that. So it's not, to the people out there, it's not that we had a problem with what she said. It's when she said it and the timing of it.
I had a problem with what she said, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't just the timing.
I'm interested to hear that. I'm
ahead.
interested to hear that. But as far as Brunson goes, I think he was the culprit in Game 6 for sure. Bad turnovers, only 21 points throughout the game. Didn't really assert himself when called upon. I think the lineup of DeLon Wright and Shamit, and shout out to those guys because I still feel like to this day that the Pacers couldn't figure that lineup out offensively. Like to get points on that lineup, I felt like they didn't crack that code. It was just that in game 6 when they was out there, they didn't do enough offensively to really kind of put them up by 5, put them up by 7 or whatever. So that's why it had the look of it wasn't working in that first half, where that game was still kind of, nip and tuck. It felt like the Knicks were chasing the Pacers all throughout that first half, and then you come out of the third quarter and they drop 7 quick points on you, and before you know it, you're down by 10, 11 points. And that kind of was all she wrote after that. As far as Brunson moving forward, look, this is his team. He's not going anywhere. I do like for him to assert himself more as a facilitator, and that maybe not his game. Like he's a guard that can score. That's really kind of his bread and butter. But there's nothing wrong with him maybe working on being a better facilitator of the basketball. He tries to beat double teams, sometimes triple teams when he's in the paint, and he's brilliant at it. Like he still gets his shots off. He's brilliant at it, but I think when you do that to the level that he does it, it kind of neutralizes what a guy like OG can do when he's open. When you could create a shot for OG in the corner, or if you could create a shot for Mikal when he's, 25 feet, from the basket. It's tougher for those guys, particularly for OG to create his own shot. His handles is not there. Mikal, he stays bricking these middies. It gets frustrating every time I watch him, do a backup fadeaway, and he, bricks one off the iron. But I think if Brunson became a better facilitator, I think those guys won't struggle as much offensively because they don't have to create their own shot versus Brunson helping those guys get better shots.
Okay. Who didn't speak? Ajay, did you get a chance to talk about Brunson?
No, I didn't, but it's gonna be very short. Listen, Jalen Brunson, he gave us everything he has. We know who he is. We know what he can do on offense and on defense. He plays hard, but he's limited physically in what he could do on defense. On offense, especially in the Indiana series, I feel like he tried hard, but as a team, we didn't make it easier for him when we really could have and should have. But
in what way make it easier, you think?
Creating space for him, set up picks, and like I think Sim mentioned that he went like, or maybe Geoff mentioned, I'm sorry, I don't remember who. Like you would have Josh Hart bring up the ball as soon as he crossed half court, he gives Brunson the ball. No, man, have him play off ball. Have some like he had to work too hard. The Pacers, they sent Nimhart, Aaron Naismith, TJ McConnell, Matherin, who and God only knows whoever else, Pascal Siakam, depending on who else switched. I mean, they were throwing everything at him. Everybody had a little bit of time checking Jalen Brunson. So we really needed to figure out, even set 2-3 picks in a row just to free him up. We could have done that. We didn't do that. We didn't design plays for that. So he's only human, and there's but so much he could do. So I no complaints about, especially in the last. Can he improve? Absolutely. And we all know sometimes he tends to play hero ball. He tends to hold the ball too long. And even with him dribbling the ball too long, sometimes maybe he shouldn't have the ball in his hands that long. Having somebody else bring the ball up would mitigate that, right? Because if he doesn't have it at when the clock hits 23 seconds, he doesn't have to dribble the ball for the next 15, 18 seconds, right? Have somebody else set up the offense. So there's a lot of things we could do to make up for Jalen Brunson's weaknesses. And I think, the coaching staff in the front office, they all know that. These guys are brilliant over there, so they're gonna figure that out. They're gonna find the right personnel to put with him to help him be better. But he's definitely a keeper. He's not going anywhere, guys.
No.
So whoever in there, somebody's talking about Trae Young, that ain't happening. All right, I forgot. I forgot who it is in the chat. I know somebody in the chat said Trae Young. I'm like, oh my. What are we talking about here, man?
Yeah.
You know, one thing I think.
Go ahead, Sam.
Just real quick. One thing I think Brunson can do that'll help him get freed up. Not freed up, but when he has the ball, get a little more loose. I feel like he doesn't wait for the screens. Like he'll have the ball and the screen is coming and he moves just a little bit too quick, so the screen never makes contact. Right. So now when he goes past, the guy is still slipping past the screen. I think if he waits just a split second longer, let Mitch, Cat, whoever it is, make contact and then come off the screen, I think he'll open himself up a little bit more. And that may be part of the reason why we don't see good pick and rolls from Cat and Brunson, because that screen never really makes contact.
And I be putting that on Cat, but you're right. You got to set that. You got to set. As you're gonna say, okay. Guys.
Now, I was gonna say a lot of times we blame the screener, but sometimes it's not. It's the guy who doesn't wait for the screen to set, and then he goes that. So it doesn't just happen to Cat Queen. Happens to Mitch or Precious when he's in the game. Like a lot of the big guys, it happens to them when they. Oh, you know what else he does? That's Indiana figured it out. He rejects a lot of those screens, and then they kind of go with him in the with the rejection path. Like they kind of figure out he's gonna do that. Like he rejects more than half his screens when they come in, and they guess the right way with him. Right. The defenders. So they really study him to kind of guess what he's gonna do.
Yeah. What I was gonna add, Geoff, did you get a chance to talk about Brunson?
They started it, yeah.
Yeah. What I would add is that when Brunson has a bad game, it's not always the same thing each game. Right. So like some games it could be his process. I think in game 6, it was the tremendous I don't think it was his process in game 6. Well, I mean, okay. Maybe. To me, I feel like the lineups are not conducive to Brunson being his best self. And Joe White, I'm not. He said we didn't have the personnel to make it easy. Josh Hart and Bridges aren't capable of running an offense and setting Brunson up. That's why Indy said, bump that. I'm pressing them all and jacked us up.
Good point.
Sometimes when a player looks bad, like we just keying on that player. Like, why are you looking so bad? Like he didn't step up. And we're not looking at lineups. We're not looking at who he's in the game with. We're not looking at schematics. So there are times when Brunson has a poor floor game. But in game 6, I really think a lot of it was schematics, and I think a lot of it was the lineups. And I'm not saying the lineups I just think the roster, when you get into these, I just don't think this roster is optimized for Jalen Brunson, in my opinion. Or maybe you put in more shooting around him to give him more space. Maybe you put in Shamet. Maybe you put in Deuce. Maybe you put in someone else that they have to respect. And if they don't respect them, those guys have to knock down shots for Indiana to say, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna have," because they were willing to give up shots. They were willing to give up shots and bank on the fact that this is the head of the snake. Let Mikal Bridges take those shots. Those guys are not going to kill us. We are going to crowd Brunson, and those guys didn't make them pay enough. Right. So that's why I say some of it is schematics and lineups too. It's not just Brunson being a bum or Brunson not facilitating or Brunson not passing. And everything you guys said about him is fair and it's true, but it's every game is about something different. And I'm not sure what else he could have did in game. I think he needed some help schematically, I guess is what I'm saying in game 6. I think he needed some help schematically, and he needed some player help as well. Yeah.
Can we still get DeJounte Murray?
Oh,
He'd be
Sam,
perfect.
that was my guy. That's who I wanted.
He'd be perfect next to
That's
Brunson.
who I wanted next to Brunson.
Yeah, he's coming off an injury though too.
Maybe we can get him.
New Orleans probably give him away too. I don't think they were real happy. Even when he was healthy, I don't think they were real pleased with him.
But then, I mean, we'll talk more about this in the offseason. If you're bringing in somebody to play next to Brunson, I don't think you re-sign Mikal Bridges. And I know we gave up 5 picks, but you're gonna just to have him come off the bench because you would think
it
that
would be a
guy is
trade
gonna...
of some sort. I don't think it would happen in a vacuum. Like if you're if you're going to bring in a starter like that, the line somebody's gonna. I don't know.
Josh Hart.
Somebody has to go.
Josh Hart go to the bench.
Yeah, Josh Hart. Definitely is going to the bench. Like that's one of the top priorities for that. You know, so you would say. I see what you're saying. You could still have Bridges, so you can have that guy, Brunson, Bridges, 1, 2, 3. OG at the 4 and okay.
And still keep Mitch Robb on the bench.
Because against a team like Indiana, I mean, I know we won. I guess 2 games with him starting, but when they decided to run against that double big lineup, it wasn't much we could do about it. We just didn't have the speed to be able to run with them with that
I
double
can see
big.
that.
A matchup in transition.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna have some shows over the summer talking about roster construction. Listen, the Knicks, they're gonna be some very unpopular moves that they're gonna have to make. Okay. Some very listen. It's I'm telling you that I have a feeling they're gonna make some changes that the fan base is not gonna be happy with.
Well, Sham said, JJ said, Sham said, because I didn't see it, that the Knicks are going to be aggressive in the offseason. I'm like, aggressive? I don't know if we need big changes. I thought we just need like some little changes.
Right.
Yeah, little tweaks.
You know what I'm saying? Aggressive.
Need some tweaks. Yeah.
Aggressive to do
Queen,
what?
Let me ask you something. Queen, you mentioned 5 out offense. Who's that 5 out offense?
We didn't play it.
Josh Hart in there?
No. This is the question in the offseason. Do you want to double down with defense, move Cat to the 4, play Mitch at the 5, surround those 2 with defense? Or if you think about how we played before teams figured out putting their center on Hart, if you have a 5-out offense where everybody can shoot the ball, they can't do that. Your center now has to play Cat. That opens up so much space for the Knicks. So your defense is not going to be great, but the plus minus on that team, if I'm not mistaken, was a positive. Was it a positive in terms of the defense? When things started to shift, when they put their wing on Cat, so now we don't have the spacing. They put their big on Hart, so now their wing is right there for rim protection. Now your defense better be on point because you're not getting what you were getting offensively, right? So I think they're going to have to make that decision. You doubling down on defense with the double big, or you're going to go 5 out, have some defensive players on your bench. Don't get me wrong. So you can, mix it up. But that's a decision they're going to have to, going to have to make, or go double big and have a offensive big so that you can switch. Either way, whatever they decide, they're going to have to make a decision.
Oh, I can't wait for those shows when we're going to be playing roster construction.
Let's do Cat real quick. Then we out of here. Y'all throwing in roster construction. We can't get the Cat.
Ajay's the ghost in the machine over here. Flying the lightning.
Jeff,
right, so we're going to go Trey, Sim, Jeff, Ajay. Trey Sim, Jeff Adjay for Cat. They traded for Cat. I thought it was a risky move. When Leon Rose made it. Your thoughts on Cat this series, if you want to talk about the season itself, and whether or not you think this is a good pairing with JB. But let's just start with this series. Your thoughts on Cat this series?
Trey, hold
we
on.
got another super chat.
We have a few of them actually.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Let's run through them real quick. Paige Duggar, real quick. Thank you for $2 super chat. Say Rick Carlisle would have won with the Knicks. Period. He's really emphatic. He knows this.
Maybe
Because the roster, I don't know. I think the roster construction has a lot to do with it. So it can't just be the coach, man. It has to do with the players as well. So I don't know. Could maybe not. Right? Thanks for the $2 super chat. Another one for Pash Duggar said, "Would you trade Cat for Alonzo Moore and Williams?"
Williams? What Williams? The power forward on Chicago? Nah.
What Williams? Oh my!
Does it matter? Is there any Williams?
Any Williams? Pick a William.
You can get all the Williams, and it's not going to help.
Oh my gosh!
Paris Duggar, thank you for another fight.
Man.
Best I heard, now he trolling. Best I heard was Cat for Quickly and Scotty Barnes.
Not doing that either.
But better get
Quickly helps us, but Scotty Barnes is not. Nah.
Y'all better stop.
Come on now.
I like both of those players, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Silk Sun, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Said Queen, Al Horford as our starting four.
Nah.
I don't think he could play those minutes. Al Horford, somebody in that mold, baby. But I don't think Al Horford can play those types of minutes.
I don't think he gets moldier than Al Horford at this point. He's like 8 years old.
Listen, he's a free agent, and I think there's a good chance he's going to end up with the Knicks. Let's move on.
Off the bench.
I don't have a problem with that, but not the starting four.
Yeah, he's not going to be our starting four. He's going to be off the bench. He's going to give us some really good minutes.
I can see that. Taj Gibson.
Yeah, I would like that actually.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right.
Go ahead, Trey. Sorry about
that. Trey didn't like it that much. It's like, you can keep your Al Horford.
No, he's a free agent. We're not trading anybody, fam. He's gonna be a free agent.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't want Al Horford on this
series.
Yeah, very frustrating with Cat. Very, very frustrating series for him. I guess his best game was in Game 3 with the 20-point comeback. But as I've said all year, he plays his best when he plays the 4. I don't like him when he plays the 5. Because he gets drawn away from the paint. He gets drawn away from the basket. And I think having him play next to a big the way Minnesota played him next to Rudy, you saw the best of Cat. Defense might not have been still there, but all he had to worry about was just getting his offense going. He didn't have to worry about protecting the paint, didn't have to worry about, whether guys was going to get, blow by him for easy dunk or layup. And I'm dissatisfied that it took till Game 3 of the conference finals for that to finally kind of come to fruition. Mitch coming back healthy and him coming off the bench and him getting into shape. I would have liked to have seen that even before the Detroit series to see how, both of those guys, fit together. But I think just overall in this series, it wasn't a great series for Cat. He showed up in some moments, particularly Game 3. Defensively, he was just maddening in Game 6. The drop coverage stuff really gets on my nerves. When guys are left wide open for easy threes. It's just something they got to figure out this offseason. I know he'll be part of the plans. I don't think Cat's going anywhere unless Giannis says I want to be a Knick, which I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But as far as I'm concerned, I feel like he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. So we're just going to have to figure out how do we maximize Karl Anthony Towns playing power forward and not playing center most of the time.
Yeah. Just as backdrop, though, he had the best plus minus on the team in the playoffs.
Overall?
Yep.
That's surprising.
Yeah, he did.
He had the best plus. I didn't think Towns was terrible.
He was +7 in the Indiana series. Everybody else was
He was +7 in the Indiana series. He's maddening. So it just takes it up a notch. Like, oh man, this guy's terrible.
Right.
And when you look at his counting stats and you look at his plus minus, I think we should have went to Cat more in the series. But anyway, Sam, just your thoughts on Cat, Game 6, the series, and if you want to sprinkle in the season, you can.
Okay. I'm not really a fan of Cat.
Okay.
And it's probably more his personality than play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really a fan of him, but I support him and I always want him to do well. I think I like the way he played against Boston better than I like the way he played against Indiana. I thought Boston, he was more intentional with the way he was trying to score. And maybe that was more schematics. They were really trying to focus on him getting the ball inside and scoring. And he was just intentional. I feel like against Indiana, he wasn't as intentional. And what I mean by that, we were talking about this on Tony's show. Sometimes I feel like Cat just gets what he can get, right? Or it's not like I'm getting the ball here and I'm gonna get the shot that I want. This is the shot that I'm going to, and you're not gonna stop me from getting it, right? I feel like it's kind of whatever, and it's why you see sometimes these crazy shots like Pascal Siakam had him shooting floaters from the free throw line, because he couldn't figure out how to get past them, and the rest were letting Pascal play aggressive against him too, bump him. So I feel like I would like to see Cat just be more intentional about where he's getting his shots, and just in Game 3 in the fourth quarter, he decided I'm going to the basket and they're just not going to stop me. I'm just going no matter what. And he scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. And I think he can do that, but I feel he has the tendency to fade away and not be in the game sometimes, and on this team, he just can't do that. You know what I mean? So he frustrates me a lot. You see the things he can do, and then you see him, kind of fade away. I think he played well. I do think we should have went to him more. I think that we should allow him to, get the ball at the elbow and have guys cut into the paint off of that because he's a good passer. Right. I think we can utilize that. I don't think that's utilized enough. He can, he's not a super ball handler, but he can dribble enough where every once in a while he might be able to help in that department if we don't find another facilitator. You know what I mean? So I don't think we're using everything that Cat has to offer.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot that he can do that, hopefully next year we can look back at the tape. They'll look back and say, okay, look, here's some things that we can do. Because, we got him just before training camp or whatever. So, it's not a lot of time to really Tom Thibodeau did coach him before, but it's a different team. Different player now too as well. So hopefully, they can look back and say, okay, here's how we can use them, and then start putting those things in, to utilize those things and really be able to get everything from Cat. So I'm not mad at Cat. I see all this stuff, I see stuff about, in the news today, it's his fault. I mean, that's crazy. You know what I mean? I mean, I think he played and tried the best he can to help this team to win. We don't win game 3 without him, right? You know, so I think he did everything that he can to help this team win. And I think he wants to win here. He's dedicated to win here. And you see moments where he plays hard. If he can clean up some of the crazy mistakes, the crazy fouls, I think he picks up some of those fouls trying to be aggressive. He's really not an aggressive personality type, right? But he's trying to be aggressive. So you see him push and he extends his arm when he's pushing or hold and grab in some moments when he doesn't really need to be. So I think, you know, if he can clean that up so he can stay on the floor, you know, I'm okay with him. I don't like him per se, but you know, I think the Knicks can win with both him and Brunson though. I think we can win a championship with those guys if we put the right team around them.
We put the right team, around them. Yeah. I agree with that. I forgot who I said next between Geoff and Adre. Y'all know my condition, so whoever wants to.
Yeah, I think you go in order. So Cat Queen, I'm sure you remember. I really hated that trade when they did it. The Cat trade, not because I don't like Cat. Actually, you know, I'm okay with him basketball wise, and I think he is a better player than Julius Randle. I just hated that we gutted the bench. And we took a very big piece of our bench when we traded for Karl-Anthony Towns, and we never made up for it. At least the guys we got on the bench, Tom Thibodeau never trusted them enough to know whether we made up for it or not. So I don't know if we had the pieces, but we just never knew. All right.
And basically, you talk about DiVincenzo, right?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. I agree with Sim. Cat has more in his bag than we're taking advantage of. You can count on one hand, and I'm not kidding. On one hand, how many times in the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Final they did pick and roll or pick and pop between Jalen Brunson and Cat?
I don't think Pop is available, but go ahead.
Why not? He's a terrific 3-point shooter. Like we never gave that a chance. Like we're not using the guy for what he's good for. You know, he has a lot. Hopefully, like with 1 season under his belt and a longer training camp, like we could figure that out. But these are things that you expect the team as a whole to know ahead of time, like to know throughout the season. Let's try this. Let's use this a little more. And there's another thing too. In the beginning of the season, he was passing the ball more, he stopped doing that at some point during the season. He stopped, like his assist number just completely dropped. So I don't know what went on with that. Like what mechanics they saw that they say, you know what, don't pass the ball anymore. Yeah, he had a couple of turnovers, but at least he was trying to pass. Now, towards the end of the season, he was having turnovers anyway, but without trying to pass the ball. He was just losing the ball. You know, so I think there's a whole lot more in Cat that we could benefit from than what we did this season. Hopefully next season they exploit that a little more. And I too think we can win with those two guys in our lineup. You know, if you manage the minutes right and do what you got to do. I think, listen, we have him, so I don't think he's gonna go anywhere. So we might as well just figure out how to maximize his potential. You know, and put the right teammates around the right pieces around him and Brunson to get this team where we wanted to go. So yeah, it is what it is. We have him. I don't have a problem with Cat because I think he's very talented. I mean, we've had games where he's like, I mean, we have games where he's completely unstoppable. But you know, we can have more of those games if they use him right. You know, if they figure out how to use them right. So,
Jack, your thoughts on Cat?
First of all, I just it's one thing I didn't hear mentioned that I think is underrated in his game is his rebounding.
Right.
He's a fantastic rebounder, one of the best in the NBA at the 5 spot, no less. So I actually disagree with Trey. I think Cat is better at the 5. I don't really want to see him at the 4. I think that if you are going to keep Cat and Brunson, you're probably going to have to lean into a 5-out scenario, which they didn't do much of at all this year. If you think about it, Mitchell Robinson or Josh Hart, neither one of them are a 5-out player. I don't care necessarily who that is, but I think that, you know, if you have, like, think about how good the Indiana Pacers offense is. The Knicks can do the exact same thing. Surround those guys, have shooters on the floor at every position. And once you have to if you can't put your big man on Josh Hart, you remember what it was like the first 40 games of the season until OKC kind of put out the blueprint. It was that fourth quarter and that loss to the Thunder that started all of this stuff. And if you eliminate that, first of all, you're going to get better touches for Cat. You're going to get more points because you're going to spread the ball. You're going to have 3-point shooters all over the court, high percentage shooters, good shots, good shot selection. And we've seen it with Boston. We've seen it with Indiana. And I think if you're going to make the decision to keep those 2 guys, I think you have to have an offense that leans into that and plays all 5 guys. If you want to go with a defensive model and keep more OG and Bridges as your cornerstones, and then I think you're going to have to make some other adjustments where you have a team that's more able to defend than we have right now, because I think it's really difficult in the modern NBA to hide 2 negative defenders. But if you can put up a lineup that can score enough points that it doesn't matter, like, great offense beats good defense. I've seen it. Like, this isn't the 1990s anymore. I've seen teams with the Denver Nuggets won an NBA championship without an elite defense. That doesn't mean you can be porous, but again, you can apply some of these things, and maybe one of those things is having the 6'5" combo guard so Jalen can play off the ball, and then you're 5 out and you're spaced. And how do you defend that when everybody can shoot the 3 and everybody is in lockstep and it's just one? It makes it very difficult. And then if you get out on all the shooters, JB can kill you off the bounce. And if Towns is playing a 5, he's going to crush him off the bounce. Like, we see that repeatedly. So to me, then just my personal opinion, he's going to be a liability defensively, whether he's at the 5 or whether he's out the 4. But I think you're going to have to lean into the offense in order for this team to reach their maximum potential.
Can Tibbs lean into the offense that way?
I don't know.
Go get Mike D'Antoni as an assistant.
Listen. I still think. Listen, you're gonna whoever they bring in as that other person to complete it is gonna make a difference. Yeah. That person has to be a defensive person. Like, you can't be a seat. You can't be like a turnstile, right? So you're gonna have OG. You're gonna have OG. You're gonna have Bridges. If you can get, say, a Dorian Finney-Smith, it doesn't have to be him, but somebody in that mold that has some size, has some switchability, can hit the 3, can play defense. You don't have to be a top 10 defense if you have a 5-out lineup that's really cooking. You can be 12, 13. I think you're going to be fine. My point is, that's the lineup where you're going to get the best out of both of those guys. Whereas a defensive lineup with Mitch, you're going to get something out of Cat, don't get me wrong. And the Knicks can win a championship either way, by the way. With him at the 4 as a more defensive-minded lineup or 5, I think the Knicks can win a championship either way. I just don't think you get the best out of Karl-Anthony Towns when you put a center next to if that center was Hartenstein, like Hartenstein and Cat.
Oh my gosh, that would have been.
You understand what I'm trying to say? So I guess it depends on if you're gonna put who's that center you're putting next to him. If you're putting that center next to him with some ball skills that can score, now we talking. But if you're putting a center next to him, and I'm not taking anything away from Mitch, who when he's healthy, we already know what he can do. Elite defender, elite rim protector, elite pick and roll defender, shot. Like, I'm not taking anything away from Mitch, but it does change things on the offensive end some, right? So, yeah, I mean, it could be a 3-and-D guy, or it could be a Isaiah Hartenstein type player. I think either one of those would bring out the best in Cat and Brunson.
Yeah. And, and hopefully that guy, we have a lot of clumsiness in that starting lineup, in my opinion. Especially when Mitch is in there with that group. I mean, Cat is a little clumsy. Mitch is clumsy. OG is clumsy. Josh Hart can be clumsy.
Yeah, Precious. When he's out there. I know you're talking starting five, but there's other guys on the Knicks that can play clumsy.
Hopefully, the guys that we bring in, just have more body control, so we're not as, because sometimes we got guys falling all over the place.
Yeah. Josh Hart was playing like he was a defensive back.
Can I ask a question?
Josh Hart was playing for the Pacers in a few of those games. He was playing for the other team in a few of those games.
Queen, I have a question, and what you're saying is a good segue to my question. We keep saying, and I see some in the chat too, like we cannot have, it's impossible to hide two negative defenders, right? But we have three of them. Like, is Josh Hart getting a pass? Josh Hart's a terrible defender.
Yeah, but we don't anticipate him being in the lineup next year.
But
in the starting
all season.
But if you can't hide two, you certainly can't hide three, right? That goes without saying. You mention that if you can't hide two, you can't hide a third one either. I think that's the point.
I'm sorry. We have to emphasize that we can't. We have three bad defenders on. Like, you can't listen. We overachieved with what we had with the line. The Knicks really overachieved when you look.
Some people would say they underachieved given the talent, but okay. Some people.
Yeah. And goalpost changes when you knock the champs off.
Right.
Facts.
True.
Facts. And I guess the question is, do you think the Knicks underachieved or overachieved this season?
I think we're right where. I think we're right. We're right there. I don't think we did either, to be honest with you.
We achieved.
We achieved.
I don't think we overachieved or underachieved. I think we're right there.
And I think to incorporate what everybody's saying, we overachieved when we defeated the Boston Celtics. We underachieved when we lost to the Pacers.
Yeah,
Pacers are a better team than you think.
Yeah, that's what the thing about the Pacers. People keep. The Pacers are good.
They're excellent. They're not just
good. Exactly. People keep.
I was afraid of the Pacers, but at the beginning of the season, there were actually the beginning of the season. The one team everybody was afraid of was the Celtics, right? By December, it's like, we have another problem. It's Cleveland Cavaliers, right? Mm-hmm. So, but you kind of had the feeling when those two teams were knocked out, you felt like, there's a path to the final.
There's a path.
There's a path.
Yeah, but that's when the goalpost moved.
Yeah, that's when the goalpost. But I always felt the Pacers was a terrible matchup for us. Like they're I don't think they're a better team. Like they're right there. Like the record to tell you that they're exactly like probably almost the same. But the matchup was really bad for us.
The difference between the Pacers this year and last year is their ability to handle pressure situations. Like, you go back to that Milwaukee series where I think it was game 5 and they were down by 7 with like under a minute left. And me and Maestro were wrapping up the podcast and we was just like, yo, looks like Milwaukee's about to get game 5. And then I turned the TV off for about 20 minutes. I checked the phone for the score, and Bucks lost the game. They came back within, they came back from 7 down with under a minute left. They did the same thing in the Cleveland series in game 2. Came back from a huge deficit. It's like they've had 3 of these types of games throughout this playoff run. And it all just comes down to the Pacers being able to be clutch in those moments, to be able to better handle those situations when you need a basket, when you need a defensive rebound, or, you're not turning the ball over, you're not having clumsy inbound passes the way they did in last year's postseason run. To me, that's the difference between the Pacers this year and last year.
Yeah. And, to kind of piggyback, because you mentioned it last year, I feel like these two, the Knicks and the Pacers, are, for the most part, even. I mean, we win game 1 like we should have.
Yeah.
There's a game 7, right? But you know what else they have that we don't have? That squad's been together for a little while.
Continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They have some experience. They understand what that pressure is.
Yeah.
You look at the two teams in the championship, they've been together for a little while. Right? And so maybe you stay the course and add around the edges and let the team be together for a little while and see what comes of it.
That's a great point, Sam. Should we feel pretty good about this team, given the fact that we didn't maximize, in my opinion, the offense? We didn't maximize Cat and Brunson. We played with a short bench. Like, we didn't grow the bench. There's a lot of meat on the bone still that we left, and yet we found ourselves, within 2 games of the NBA Finals with all of that.
Right. With all of that. And people can say, well, it was a fluke. You beat Boston and Cleveland was out, but I mean,
how is it
playoffs?
How is Boston a fluke? I hate people say that. We beat them like fair and square.
We
beat them.
Yeah.
We beat
You're about
them.
to go up 3-1 before there's darling superstar Tatum got hurt, by the way.
Right.
So
we beat them.
Not pretend like they were up 3-1 and this injury happened and then we beat them 3 straight.
No, we lost the game when they didn't have Tatum. They beat us. They crushed this game 5. We beat them fair and square.
Right.
But what the narrative would have been had he not got hurt in game 4. They would have said, if there's a team that could come back from 3-1, it would have been that Boston Celtic team. That's what the narrative would have been.
Yeah, that was the narrative. You see how we beat them in game 6?
Oh yeah.
I don't care. I don't care if Jason Tatum was there. We were smacking them in game 6.
Yeah, he wasn't 40-point difference. He's a great player. He wasn't going to save him.
Right.
Yeah, facts.
Right.
But one thing that's different about this Pacers team than last year's too is Benedict Mathurin being back in the lineup is huge for them. He's instant offense off the bench. He's slippery. He absorbs a lot of contact. He gets to the free throw line. He's a very good offensive player. And really when the second unit for Indiana is struggling to find points with Halliburton out, you can plug Mathurin in a way that Obi Toppin, for instance, can't. You know what I mean? Mathurin can create shots for himself. He can be your hub. He can fuel you. Even when you have guys like Siakam and Halliburton on the bench. So he was hurt for last year's series, and I thought that Mathurin did an excellent job as a secondary scorer for them.
Yeah. Quick question, 30 seconds, and we out of here. Which bench player are you bringing back, if anybody? Sam?
I'm bringing Deuce back. I don't know if we count Mitch or Josh Hart, which one we count as being on the bench. I think I'm bringing I bring Deuce and let's just say Mitch. I think I'm bringing them both back unless we have to include one of them in a trade to get a better bench player or a starter.
I kind of consider. I should say bench players that's not part of the top 7. Like I think,
okay.
yeah.
So you mean it, like Shamit and Wright?
Shamit, Wright, Precious, and Mitch.
Payne.
Mitch. I think Payne. That's the other
Payne.
one.
I'm done with Payne.
Let Payne walk, man.
I'm done with campaign.
Let him walk.
Too much pain.
I like what I seen from Shamit in the playoffs. And the fact that he's got a quick trigger. I would really try to. I would want to give Shamit another go because we need that quick shooting. Yeah.
Trey?
And
sorry, go ahead, Sam. Finish.
no, and right. I mean, we got to have room for, try to pick up a bench player in free agency. If we can't, then I'm looking at trying to find some room for like Dottier or Tyler or someone like that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Trey?
Yeah, I'm bringing Deuce back, but I need to see a combination of Kolick, Dottier to be able to help complete that bench for next season. Those guys, to me, are your rookies. They're your future. They, to me, have to be part of this 9-man rotation coming up next year.
Okay. Ajay?
I mean, the kids, I'm keeping all the kids. That means Kolick, McCullough, Pacome Dottier, Queen, Margin Beauchamp. I feel like he had something when he was in Milwaukee. I know people say, well, why did Milwaukee let him go? I don't know what money situation they had over there, but I feel like
I don't think it was money. It was performance.
Oh, his performance. All right.
For him. I think for the Clippers it was money.
But
somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
I would. I mean, you said outside of 7, so that excludes Deuce. I would want to see Shamit. I feel like if Shamit had regular minutes, he would have been more productive and more helpful on both ends of the floor because he seems to like he's a relentless defender when he's out there, and he can shoot the 3. So I would bring him back. I would definitely bring Shamit back. And listen, DeLon Wright too. He gave us some good minutes out there, man. His size and defense. I mean, I hate to say this, man. I feel like we had a pretty good team that we didn't maximize. So that the same team we have really could have went like a little bit further if we played with the higher IQ basketball. But whatever. It depends, and also it depends on what's out there. Who's available. You say you want to bring somebody back, but you gotta know what's who you compare, like who you walking away from to keep this guy.
Yeah. The problem with some of these guys is, when we got him, like Shamit was on his way out the league when we got him, right? He was a training camp invite. I guess we signed campaign. He wasn't on his way out the league. Wright was a throw-in. He wasn't really playing. If we don't pick him up, are these guys even going to be playing on a team next year? You know what I'm saying? So are they really? Are they really? They got used in the series, and they helped us, but long term, are they? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think because the trade happened so late last year, we didn't have a chance to try to sign anybody in free agency, or see what was going to be available this year. I think we'll have more time, and we should have a little bit more free agency money to be able to, get an impact player. I think.
If we can get some scoring off the bench, and listen, Deuces off the bench wasn't his best shooting game. I understand the gravity and the on-off numbers wasn't his best shooting season in terms of points off the bench. You're not going to get that from Mitch. Hart, I think that's going to fluctuate from game to game depending on his offensive rebounds and his transition points. And we can get a bona fide scorer off the bench, that would be great. But other than that, I would like to keep Shamet and DeLon Wright if we can't upgrade the bench. And I know the tomatoes are coming, but y'all can kill me with the kids. I feel like right now, the future is now. And when you going deep into the playoffs, you need players with NBA experience because it's tight, the lights are bright, the margins are thin, and there's no time to and listen, I'm not saying a rookie, I'm not saying a rookie or second year player can't perform in those situations. I'm just saying I don't know if I'm rolling the dice. I don't know if I'm rolling the dice.
But look at the Pacers. But Queen, look at the Pacers. Look at what they're doing. They're rolling out 11 guys out there. Some of those guys
who's the second year player? That guy Walker played like 12 minutes in the series.
You got Walker.
That's what I'm saying. He played like 12 minutes in the series. In the entire series. So to me, there's a difference between playing young players spot minutes. That's very different. Spot minutes is very different than you in the rotation and we counting on you game in and game out. And that's two different things. So if you're talking about spot minutes, I'm good with that. But if you're talking about we playing 8, we playing 9, and this second year play is part of that 9, he better be a first round draft pick, top 5. You know what I mean?
I really think, everybody, people argue with me about the same thing. Right. Everybody's always like, well, OKC and the Pacers, but we're assuming that we got the same type of bench players they have. And I just don't think we do. You know what I mean? And I'm not blaming anything on Wright, but in the regular season, he hit a couple of threes. In the playoffs, when he got wide open threes, he clanked them off the side of the. There was heartbreaks.
Yeah.
I'm like, where their guys, if they was open, they was knocking them out. You know what I'm saying? So, I just don't think we had the same level of players on our bench as other teams. Now if I don't want to keep harping on that, but if we had like DiVincenzo and Josh Hart off the bench, like, and we didn't do the trade, and then you still had Deuce coming off the bench, right? I mean, that's 8 players right there that would be in the rotation, and then you add a Shamet, all of a sudden you got 9 strong rotation players, or you add whoever else, and it looks very different. I think a lot of it was personnel. Wright didn't come until halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Shamet was hurt most of the season, or for a good portion of the season. Then he had to be worked into the lineup. I think it's and he was worked in, and he wasn't playing well. I mean, throughout the season, there were people like, get rid of Shamet. He sucks. He's not doing anything. I mean, there was a time in the season where people was like, why are we playing Shamet? There was a time in the season where, why are we playing Campaign? There was a time in the season when people like, play Campaign more. I mean, and the reason why it was all over the place like that is because they're inconsistent, because they're not that good at this point in their career. It's hard for them to be consistent.
Wow. Seb, that's wow. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And the thing about us as Knicks fans, somebody have a good game. Oh, we should have been playing them all year long. I don't know.
Right. Give them an extension.
Exactly.
Yeah, then somebody plays bad, like Brunson. Oh, we gotta trade him. We ain't gonna never win championship with. We go too up and down based on a few performances. And listen, shout out to Shamet, shout out to Wright. Their plus minus, but their plus minus did not come against Indiana's starters. I'm not taking anything away from the way they played. They helped us get back in the game. Their defense was good. Everybody looking at the plus minus. But would that plus minus look the same if Halliburton and Siakam was in the game? Again, not taking anything away from them, but just trying to add context when we're talking about re-signing those guys. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Geoff, Shamet as your number 7 guy off the bench is much different than Shamet as your 9th guy. You understand? That's two different things. Right. In my opinion, Deuce has to step up big because he's basically our scorer off the bench right now. Right? Because if Mitch stays in the he's not. I don't see Hart as Hart can get you some points, don't get me wrong, but Deuce would be our number 1 scorer off the bench. So his efficiency has to step up a notch. And I still think the Knicks need to go out and get somebody else. But Geoff?
I agree. Ideally, you can procure a shooting guard starter and move Mikal to the 3 and play OG at the 4, slide Josh Hart to the bench, and then and you have Mitch and Deuce. And then, as you said, if Landry Shamet is that 9th guy, I'm comfortable with that. But we're going to have, the thing about it is you're going to have to rely on some vetmin guys. And vetmin guys are vetmin guys for a reason, right? Yeah. If they didn't have flaws in their game, they would be a lot more expensive, right? So you have to find the vetmin guys who do the things you need them to do the most consistently. And Landry Shamet has really shown that he can do it on the big stage and in the playoffs. And that's why I put him ahead of Campaign. Payne was much better in the regular season. Again, Shamet wasn't healthy, but that's part of it too, right? Availability is an ability. But Payne didn't shy away from the bright lights, and even in garbage time of Game 6, I think he knocked down 3 triples, on not easy shots by any stretch of the imagination. So I like Landry Shamet. If he's healthy next year, I think he'd be a great vetmin guy to have off the bench.
All right. I have a question. And I don't want to hear no if, like, straight answer. Straight answer. Which 5 are you keeping? I don't want to hear honorable 6 mention. Straight up 5 players you keeping.
Just because, bench and starters combined?
Which 5 you keeping?
Brunson, OG, Deuce, Mitch.
That's about 5 right there.
That's 4.
That's 4. Okay.
That's 4.
You don't have a center. You don't have a big man yet.
You got Mitch. You said Mitch.
I said Mitch.
Oh, you said Mitch. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, I said Mitch.
Mitch, Deuce,
Brunson,
OG, and Brunson.
I'm gonna go Shamet. I'll go Shamet.
Wow.
Damn.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
Trey.
Wow.
You said pick 5.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, I know it's a tough question. Yeah.
Wow.
No.
David Smith's going to come through the screen and start choking you. I don't know how, but he's going to start.
He a Cat fan? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. You asked me to pick 5, so.
No, that's fine.
It might change. It might change tomorrow morning.
That's all right. It's allowed to.
That's fine for the moment. Yeah. Next show, we'll probably ask the same question.
Yeah. Brunson, Cat, OG, Bridges, and probably it's tough between Deuce and Mitch. If I'm going in that lineup, I'm gonna say Deuce, and I'll use Mitch to trade him for something else.
They don't have to be starters, right? It's just who the 5. They don't have to. Any 5. Okay.
Any 5 you keep in, and the rest of them you up for trade.
Yeah, I would go with the original starting lineup, though I wouldn't start Hart though. But I would want him on the team, so I would go with the original start.
Strictly 5. Strictly 5. I don't want to hear.
This is not where you a math problem where you have to show your work, right? We just want exactly. All right. The starting lineup. The original starting lineup I would go to. Okay,
Geoff?
yeah.
I'm going with Brunson, OG, Cat, Bridges, and Deuce.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going with the later starting lineup. So Brunson, Bridges, OG, Cat, and Mitch.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. You bringing Thibodeau back? And this is the last question. We got to get out of here. You bringing Thibodeau back, Sim? Yes, no?
Yeah, I'm bringing the Tibbs back.
Trey?
I'm bringing him back.
Ajay? What?
Answer written on your ceiling or what? He's looking up there. I'm like, cheat sheet up there or what?
You can't confirm nor deny.
Nope, just like you told us, because you're looking like it's going to be long-winded. Yes, no. You bring it to back.
It's a yes or no answer?
Yes.
Oh, damn.
Dude, just say no, man.
You can't use my same against me.
But Trey, it's not a straight no though, because it's
nah. This is what you told us.
No, I'm not bringing him back.
Okay, Jeff.
I'm keeping him. Yes.
With caveats, but okay, yes. I'm bringing Thibodeau back. All right. Last words. Shout out to the chat. We appreciate you rocking with us. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. It definite order unlike order, not like button.
No. Hit the like button. You've been here for almost 3 hours.
Listen,
you can't
it's
tell me
all
you're
good
like
for the algorithm.
Like button.
It doesn't matter.
3 hours, man. You have to like this to be here. 3 hours with us.
For real.
Yeah. I'm not sure how many likes we have so far, but let's try to get it to 100. If we can. Any last words?
Queens, when's the next show?
The next show is Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you doing Queen's Court tomorrow? Or
no? Queen's Court is tomorrow. Yes, thank you.
What time?
I have a client at 8. I'm trying to move him. If I can't move him, it's going to be 8:15. If I can, it'll be 7:30. I'll keep you guys posted. But Queen's Court tomorrow and nothing but Knicks.
On Thursday. Cool.
And then Thursday. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Any?
I think my last thing is it's 2 days. Today's Monday. We got eliminated Saturday. I think we need to celebrate the team a little bit more than
yeah.
I mean, we you seeing reports and the Cat and guys in the locker room and the coaches weren't getting along and blaming this guy, blaming that guy, and I mean we were just 2 games away, like Queen said, from making the NBA Finals. That's a feat, though. That's a feat for a team that 5 years ago won 21 games.
It's a great conversation to have for sure.
No. Listen, man. This team. It was a great season. This team did well. This is first time these guys are playing together as this group.
Yeah.
Did well, man.
Yeah.
Man, shout out to Sharon. He said, "Peace to the gods, man." That's my guy. Sharon Cloyd. Hey, Queen, you want to shout out the chat real quick? Some of the guys or
Bradley Spalding, D Grant, GS 400. I appreciate you. Sherman was in the house. Paris Duggar, appreciate the super chat. Sharon Cloyd, I hope I got that right. Nostalgic Nick, Mega NYK, been a minute. BX Mel, Real King. I'm not gonna get to everybody. Tori B slipped in here late. I appreciate you, sis. Paris Duggar, Jerrell, Lady and the Chef, appreciate you. Jerrell, appreciate you.
Shout out my guy, Jerrell.
Queen, there was
David G. Yes,
we missed. There's one super chat we missed.
Okay,
this one real quick. Just shout out to Jam Rock and thank you for $2 super chat. I just want to point that out. He says, Mitch Rob Cat lineup definitely rating 105, and when you add Jalen Brunson, go to 117.
Defense rating, not definitely.
Defensive rating.
Oh, I'm sorry, defensive rating.
Yeah. What's the offensive rating though?
Right.
That's
exactly.
JB's in though. Yeah, the offensive rating exactly.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody. The coolest 718. I'm not going to get to everybody, but I appreciate y'all rocking with us. Those rocking with us on Twitter, I appreciate you. The replay gang, and then also the silent listeners who, you know, when we have our live shows, they'll come up and like, "What's your name in the chat?" They're like, "No, I'm not in the chat. I just be listening to y'all." So appreciate you all. Until I wonder why my little song is not there at the end. All right, I'll
It
fix it.
plays with it though with the
It
stream.
played.
It played in the beginning.
You did?
It
You
played
heard
also.
it?
Yeah, it did.
All right.
Your iPad just doesn't like it. It muted it. Or
You are having audio
I
issues.
know. All right. Ajay or Geoff?
I got it. I got it.
All right. Until next time, fam.
Sister, you one of a kind.
Yes.
Sister, it's time you
That's
shine. Dope Soul.
Where you at?
Dope Soul.